Audio test 1, 2, 3.
Hello. Interstellar
again.
This is our Interstellar discussion. No time for caution.
Interstellar.
90% honesty.
Do not go gentle
Yes.
into that goodness.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Override. The best.
What is the feature-length podcast? Anyone?
The feature-length podcast is a show where three idiots talk about film and entertainment.
Good answer.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, are you talking to us?
Yeah. I'm talking to the voices in my head.
Like I truly don't know. It felt like a fever dream. I swear to God, I could not
It sounds so
make this shit
stupid
up.
hearing that.
If you're listening to this is a podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast.
Welcome back to the feature-length podcast, a podcast where we talk about movies and TV for a feature length of time.
Do not go gentle into that good night. Though the earth may be barren and the crops have turned to dust, still there lies a ray of hope beyond the stars. What if humanity was destined to evolve into a way of life on a new planet? What if the bond between human beings could transcend dimensions and reality itself? What if we put all our faith into a group of brave explorers assigned with finding humanity a new place to call home? These questions and more are at the heart of the movie we're here to talk about today. Welcome back to the feature-length podcast. My name is Daniel, and I'm joined by Marco.
Yo.
And Carolina.
Hi.
As you can tell from the title of this episode, today we're talking about Christopher Nolan's 2014 film Interstellar. This one's been a long time coming. All three of us have, to some degree, a history with this film since it came out. We all saw it in theaters, and it played a huge role in our interest in science in high school. All three of us were in the same grade 12 physics class, and this movie was the talking point in class when it came out, to the degree that we even saw our physics teachers having passionate discussions during in-class work periods about the science behind the film. In that sense, this movie became kind of a meme between members of our class and has since carved a very significant place in our memories of that era of our lives. We even had a field trip to go see the movie in theaters, for the science, of course. Speaking of the science of Interstellar, this movie's scientific accuracy was responsible for realistically depicting a black hole years before we first saw real photos confirming what they look like. Thanks to advising physicist Kip Thorne's heavy involvement in the production of Interstellar, the resulting film displays an overwhelming amount of integrity when it comes to the scientific theory behind its concepts. Interstellar is arguably one of Christopher Nolan's most creative and artistic films, with a gripping, complex story, breakthrough visual effects, and a score that is at times both somber and intense. This is a special film that all three of us appreciate and can't wait to talk about. We have seen where this film ventures, and we will not go gentle into that Interstellar discussion.
Nice.
All right, so here we are.
Here we are.
Oh, where do we start? Oh my goodness.
I don't know. And we should all probably give our general thoughts as per usual,
Yes.
although, but we can do that. So, who wants to go first?
Doesn't matter to me.
Does not matter to me.
I'll go first.
Go for it.
Okay, so, yeah, as I mentioned, we all saw this film around the same time. So, obviously I saw this in November 2014 in theaters. That was my first time. I did mention in the intro that we had a field trip to go see this movie. Unfortunately, I could not make that field trip, which is very depressing. I would have loved that, especially because in high school we had maybe, 2 field trips ever.
Yeah.
And that was one of them. And they were always like a movie field trip. That was the field trip in high school.
And this would have gotten you out of class for 3 hours, so
True, yeah.
that's a lot of classes.
I had a test though, so I literally couldn't do that.
Sucks.
I still remember that. Anyway, this movie I love. This is one of my favorite from Christopher Nolan, I think. And we're going to be talking a lot about the Batman movies just because
Because it's this podcast. Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, we haven't talked about them enough already. But because, one of my growing criticisms, and I still love those movies, but after seeing the new Batman movie, we started comparing Christopher Nolan's Batman films to that one and how relatively uninspired the camera work was in those movies. But this movie, Interstellar, is one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. and that is why I think it ranks more highly in his filmography for me. Like, also, I would put this in the tier of like Inception and Dunkirk. Those three are like my favorite looking Christopher Nolan films, and also their stories are great too, but specifically visuals wise. And yeah, this movie, it won an award for its use of wonderful, like, using miniatures seems like such an outdated, or not outdated, but it like a forgotten method of visual effects. So I really I like the quaintness of that rather than just resorting to CGI for everything. So it looks very genuine, and and also, I mean, we'll get into the story itself as well, but it's really intense and emotional, and it's not all style and no substance, which I appreciate. It's a perfect balance of both. So I'll leave it there for now, but that's my general appreciation of this film.
Nice. Carol, why don't you go next?
Sure. Sorry, I gotta clear my throat. So I did see this movie for the first time at the aforementioned field trip, and then I don't think I saw it ever again until I had to watch it for this podcast. Or maybe
no, that's a lie. You definitely did.
With you?
You haven't seen it since
yes,
2014.
with me, because
So
you, me,
time with Marco.
bleep and bleep. I'm not gonna make myself bleep the names. You, me, bleep and bleep watched it at my house one time after when it came out on Blu-ray. But
okay, wait, but I don't know who the bleeps are. Well, sorry for the actual bleeping, but okay, well, I've been proven wrong. Either way, since high school. I know for a
since high
fact
school.
I have not seen it again until now. So it's still been way too many years.
Wow.
Obviously, I loved it when we first saw it because I was a science nerd, and also, like, I did cry. So I like any movie that makes me cry, so easy. And yeah, it was gorgeous. It obviously blew my mind because a lot of the science is just way over my head and will forever be way over my head. Because space scares me and I don't really want to learn more about it. Honestly, it's just too much. It's too scary. So I'm good with just not knowing and thinking it looks cool. But yeah, and I love the score for studying. So that also great addition to come out of this film. Yeah, like nothing but good things came out of this movie. It was gorgeous. It taught me stuff. It tugged on my heartstrings. The performances were amazing. I honestly think this is like Matthew McConaughey's best performance ever. And also, he's never looked better. Like, I don't know. I don't know what it is about him as like a farmer NASA dude. Yeah, but
that jacket that he wears, I want that jacket.
And like the tan is perfect. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I know.
But yeah, no, this movie is great, and I will leave it there and pass to Marco.
Very nice. So, at the beginning of this podcast, like almost 2 years ago now, which is staggering.
The very beginning of this
staggering that it's been almost 2 years. Like I made a lot of jokes about this movie like changing my life, and then like I think since we've had it on the schedule, I've started to backpedal a little bit because I also haven't seen this movie in a long time. Not since high school. The last time I saw it was with Dan and Rob, which is a funny story because like Rob had bought it on 4K but didn't have a 4K playing device or a 4K TV, and I had a 4K TV but didn't have a 4K playing device, and our friend Aaron had a 4K playing device but not a 4K TV. So like we all had to like coalesce at my house to get the full 4K experience.
That's hilarious.
This was probably
I brought nothing but myself to watch.
I brought nothing but good opinions. This was probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. I mean, it was a long time ago.
Oh, you think?
Well, because the pandemic itself has been 2 years.
True.
And it was
I feel like it was just before that, though.
Okay, so let's call it like 3 years-ish.
Sure.
It's been a little while. And then before that, I probably have not seen it since high school when I saw it 3 times in theaters, which I want to get into sort of like the theater story of how that all sort of progressed because it was a funny slow build that led to like this taking over. But like then buying it on Blu-ray and watching it a bunch with friends and stuff. But that was all around high school. Saw it the one time. So yeah, leading into this, once we had it on the schedule, I was kind of trying to backpedal a little bit and be like, I don't know if it really changed my life. I mean, I definitely love it, but I was kind of exaggerating. So then, like 2 nights ago, Dan came over to watch it, and I popped in the Blu-ray, and I was like, oh, maybe we should get drinks. So then we went to the kitchen to get drinks, but on the main menu for the Blu-ray, it plays, like, the Cornfield Chase song. So we were just sitting in the kitchen, like, discussing what drinks we were gonna have, and that song started playing, and, like, Dan, like, looked over at me and he was like, man, like, this is pretty, like, hype to be just picking out drinks to this song. And I just had the feeling, just even hearing the song again, I was like, no, this movie probably did change our life. This probably is. And, like, and then watching it now, I hesitate to say this, but, like, I think this might genuinely be my favorite movie of all time. Like, full stop.
Interesting.
And I know that there's a lot of people that are going to say, but what about the selection series where you guys pick your favorite movies of all time? Just to peel the curtain back, like, I don't know about you guys, but for me, the movies that I pick for our selection series episodes are absolutely movies like that are some of my favorites of all time. But I also try to pick stuff that I feel like I have a more particular connection with than either of you guys would.
Sure.
So, like, movies that I can sort of be the expert on, as opposed to something like this or the Dark Knight trilogy, which both would qualify for the selection series, but, like, you guys have also seen a bunch and love, and so it's sort of like I'm trying to pick stuff that's specifically, like, Marco movies, as opposed to whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You guys get it.
I think that's what we all try to.
I would think,
do
just
for
looking at our
selection
picks,
series.
I think that's very much what we've done. I mean, like, Jurassic Park, obviously we've all seen, but that's still very much one that you've seen way more, and, like, my cousin Vinny, obviously we hadn't seen, and Carol's picks, yeah. So, like, I
It's
think...
by the other logic, I could have done Lord of the Rings if we hadn't done
Exactly.
it for mine, but, like, that's not
course.
just a me thing. So.
Yes. That's sort of, I think, why this has never popped up on the selection series for me. But yeah, I mean, watching it again, it's just everything we've talked about the different ways that we love movies. Like, there's the technical side of it, there's the subjective side of it, like, just in terms of the topics that it's about, and then there's, like, the emotional side of it, and then there's, like, the relevant side of it. Like, we talked a lot about this with Parasite as well, of it's so rare to find a movie that hits on the technical level and on the relevance level and on a genuine emotional level. Like, it's really... And this movie does all of those things for me, and... I don't know. Like, every time I watch this movie, I'm like, maybe this will be the time when I'm not completely blown away by it. And then you build up to Miller's Planet or the No Time for Caution scene, and I'm like, this is the best shit. I can't get over this. Like, I can't get over how incredible this is. So, yeah, I mean, I'm still obsessed with it. I might reread the Science of Interstellar book, which
Nice.
we'll talk about, because I haven't read it since... genuinely now probably about 10 years.
Whoa.
Well,
Wow.
not 10 years. I mean, this movie came out in 2014, but like 8 years.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
Because I read it when it first came out, which we'll get into how I even have that book. But like, yeah, I don't know. Like, it just, yeah, I know. We'll tell the story after. Yeah,
Carolina raised her hand.
Yeah, Carolina raised her hand. I am just blown away by this movie. And yeah, to your point, Dan, it almost feels like, and I mean this in the best possible way, but like the least Christopher Nolan movies in some ways, because of how beautiful it is, and it is such a step up, I feel like, from what we see in the Dark Knight trilogy or the Prestige or whatever. It's like, oh, this is a different level. This is like another tier of like incredibleness.
Well, even when we got to the end credits, we were researching, like, this had to have been a different cinematographer, and turns out, like, a different cinematographer than the Batman movies, for reference.
Yeah.
And turns out it was. And this is, like, pretty much the cinematographer he's used since then, and will be, like, on the new Oppenheimer movie, which is awesome, because he just seems more visionary than
I think so.
the other one.
From what I understand, the other one, I think his name was Wally. I think.
He's fine. Like, it's a style. It's just not a style that I particularly like.
Yeah, and I think if I remember my Nolan history correct, like, he was like someone that he's worked with since like film school, and so they just kind of always worked together, and he kind of carried him through. And again, not that he's bad, but it's a style. It's a very realistic, almost like naturalistic style that I think once you get into Batman movies and big sci-fi grand adventure, that style doesn't necessarily work. Like, you kind of need a bit more.
Well, I could even forgive it for the Batman movies, but it would not have worked. in
No,
this
it would
movie.
not have worked in this movie. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Or Dunkirk, or whatever, anything he's done since. So, yeah.
What was I gonna say though? We should talk about how, like, you remember the rating of this movie when it came out, and how puzzling that was?
Yeah, I do want to talk about that, for sure.
I still don't really understand. I also want to bring up, so apparently this is a movie that's often included in, like, the red flag list of movies. I don't understand
get that.
really.
I don't
like,
understand that at all.
Yeah.
I can't see anything in this movie that is like
right
hasn't aged well. Or
so just for context, I think what you mean by that is like movies like, for example, The Wolf of Wall Street,
The American Psycho,
Americans, where it's like
those make sense.
If a guy has this poster on his wall or tells you to watch
yes.
this movie, yeah, I do get that because as we've talked about, those movies are sometimes
those ones make
misinterpreted.
sense. Yeah, I don't understand why
like
Interstellar
Fight
would be
Club is on
list.
that list often too.
Yes, that kind of stuff.
Yes, absolutely. The very like the movies that toxic guys use to
enable their personality.
Yeah, but even though the movies are actually against that,
yes.
but like you would have to watch the movie and understand the movie to understand that. So yeah, for sure. But yeah, I don't get why this movie's lumped in with that at all.
I've never even heard that.
I have seen it a couple times.
Yeah,
like,
me too.
In that list, again, no idea why, but
me too.
Yeah, but even when I was reading the reviews of this movie, they're kind of all over the place, which I find really fascinating. I don't know if it's because it's so scientific based, but like half of them are like, there's too much emotion, and the other ones are like, there's not enough, and then there's too much science, not enough science. I mean, I guess it just proves you can't please everyone, but it was like very funny to start reading the like critical response section on Wikipedia and just see this like all over the place response to it.
Me too. I'm glad we're talking about this because this, I think, influenced a lot of what even ended up happening with the watching of it. But before we even get to that, like, I've always felt, you know, Nolan has very much said, like, this was me wanting to do a 2001 movie.
Yeah.
Like, he was very inspired by that. Like, so for anyone who doesn't know, like, Nolan has always wanted to do a James Bond movie. And for some reason, they won't let him do a James Bond movie. And I'm like, guys, it's Christopher fucking Nolan. Like, I don't know. Anyway, but he's always wanted to do a James Bond movie, and they would never let him. And to a certain extent, that's where the Batman movies and Inception sort of came from. More so Inception, but, like, the idea of doing, like, a high adventure, action-packed movie. And I think when you view those movies through that lens, like, it becomes really clear, especially Inception, like, oh, that's why they're all wearing suits. And, like, this very much is a James Bond movie. It's kind of a heist movie, just with, like, a weird scientific thing on top of it. And this... Even Tenet.
I mean, I haven't seen it, but, like, from the trailer, it looks like that.
I kind of get that vibe, too. And this was him being like, I really love 2001, and I want to do my 2001. And I think he accomplishes that all the way down to the reception of what happened when 2001 came out, which is a bunch of the, like, established critics of that era were like, this movie's dog crap. But, like, the young generation, which has now become the established critic generation, was like, no, this movie's revolutionary, and we are obsessed with it. And so it's so ironic in the, like, either die a hero, live long enough to see yourself become the villain kind of way, that now the established critics are doing the thing to this movie that the established critics did to 2001, where, it was this very mixed reaction that I don't understand. And a lot of the reviews and stuff, and I feel this way about the Batman as well sometimes, where it's like, I almost feel like, did you even watch the movie? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't... Because people will complain about stuff about, like, this came out of nowhere. What is this? Or what? And it's like... But, like, did you watch it? Or were you just, like, in the theater vaguely, like, picking up words? Like, I don't get a lot of the hate. And I do appreciate a lot of the YouTube critics I watch, when it first came out, that were mixed on it, years later have, like, watched it again on Blu-ray or whatever and been like, oh, we were wrong.
Well, like, this is a movie that...
This
like,
is a very good movie.
This is a movie that... Okay, theoretically, it's thought that any movie, no matter how good it is, needs at least two viewings. One for the story and one for, like...
I agree.
Absorbing everything else.
Yeah.
And I think that's especially true for this movie. Like, you need at least two viewings to wrap your head around all the ideas in this movie.
100%.
I think that's probably why I dislike a lot of, like, the movies that I do on this show. And then
I mean, it's
we
idealistic.
talk about
like,
it, and then I'm like, oh, it's better. I know for a
obviously
fact
you don't have
if I watched
time
it again. Yeah.
To do that for every movie, so it's understandable. But just, like, theoretically, you know, every movie should be given that chance in an ideal world.
Yeah.
And, I think especially for a movie like this that is very dense with concepts and even just plot information, like, you need that.
There's plot information in this that I didn't catch until my second or third watch. Even, like, going back and watching again and being like, oh, like, even really little stuff that wouldn't necessarily impact the movie in a huge way, but it's like, oh, that's fun, I didn't catch that, like, I didn't notice that before, which is also probably the sign of a good movie, though, where it's like it can keep giving you these little things that you didn't even realize.
For sure, yeah.
But yeah, no, I just think there was this. And look, I also think looking at Nolan's career, I mean, he just came off of the Dark Knight trilogy and Inception. That's what he had done before this. And if all you know this guy for and all you're expecting from this guy are like action-packed, like, I don't know. Like, I get why this weird slow sci-fi thing, people may be like, wait, what is this? But also, like, that's not a fair criticism of the movie that you just weren't expecting it to be what it was.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. So I am glad, though, that the more people rewatch it, it does seem that the critical response is becoming more positive, and people are being like, oh yeah, we were maybe way too harsh on this.
Well, I wish they edited that on Rotten Tomatoes, because this has a 72%,
yeah,
and Wonder Woman has a 93%.
I know, it's drastically low. It's unbelievable.
Are you talking about the first Wonder Woman?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a good movie, but like,
93,
come on.
It's not higher than
It's 20% higher than Interstellar. Like, fuck off. There is no way. Give me a break. Yeah.
Or like, I mean, we're fans of the MCU, but like, not all of those movies need to be 90% rated.
No.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, this movie is perfect. Like, it's a good MCU movie.
Yeah,
but it's not like,
of course.
I think Interstellar should be higher rated than like most of those.
I think
not all of those.
I think it's just because they're like simpler and more colorful and just like more easily to entertain.
Yeah. That's
That's not a sentence. Will entertain people more easily than these like the more thinky movies.
I get it, but it's also just I don't know. Like, I just feel like, who's even reviewing movies then? You know what I mean? Like, it's so disheartening to me that like film criticism now has just been like, oh, the other two Spider-Man showed up. It's like, okay, I'm glad they did, and I love that movie, but you cannot tell me that movie is better than Interstellar on like any conceivable like objective level. So,
and it's weird because you were just talking about the people reviewing movies are like this older generation who were like, when we go back to 2001, they were like the people praising that movie.
Yeah.
So it is weird because now that kind of clashes with the idea of like all these new like superhero movies getting super high ratings.
I know.
Are these the same people?
I don't know. I don't understand how like any of this makes sense. Like, I just,
unless, I mean, we should address it's very possible and very likely that like people or certain movies and production companies like attract different, not just attract, like request different critics probably for the movies to get the best possible number percentage, right?
Well, I mean, look no further than the initial reviews of any of the Disney Star Wars movies after they come out. Yeah, if you want, and you know, I mean, look, we mentioned Red Letter Media a lot on this. Like, they talk a lot about how you see they have these big events and it's a big party and like, let's fly you out and give you drinks and a meal and you get to have a big party and go see a movie.
And of course the experience is going to seem good after all
that. Of course that dictates how you leave feeling about the movie, but it's sort of like, it's not, and people always joke about like people being Disney shills or being paid off by Disney. Like, I don't think Disney legitimately is like, here's a bunch of money, now say this is a good movie. I do not in my heart believe any critic like has been in that situation.
But a flight and a meal counts as money.
But that's what I mean. Yeah. It's like, it's not a bribe.
It's subliminal.
But it is like, we're going to give you a good time and maybe you'll feel better about this. And I don't know. It's just really unfortunate that, like this, or like we talked about with the Batman, like a lot of those reviews as well just feel sort of like, I don't even know if you watched the movie. Like, I just feel like
you were there for the day, and that's just kind of, it's more of a review for how the day went for you.
Yes. Or like, it's more of a,
don't even
like,
talk
a lot
about
of the
negative
movie. Yeah, well, and that, I don't know. I just, we don't have to keep harping on it, but like, it's just frustrating. Like, I really hope as our generation like overtakes the next generation, the current generation of movie people, that this movie will get the word of mouth that like the younger generation, like our quote unquote like children's generation, like will now see this movie as the classic that it deserves to be seen as opposed to, oh yeah, it was like this weird mixed reviewed sci-fi movie. That's not true. I do not personally know a single person, including our entire, when I say entire, I mean our entire grade 12 class of jocks, of fucking dumb people, really dumb people. I had dumb people after that field trip coming up to me and being like, best movie ever, bro, and like asking me about the science in it. So don't tell me that this is not a 100% like a great movie that everyone loves. Everyone. So
and I mean, disclaimer, if you're someone who doesn't particularly, if you're not into this movie, that's totally fine.
Of course. No. Yeah, but it's just like
we just feel that the reviews weren't very fair.
Like a 70-something% on Rotten Tomatoes is ridiculous.
I do feel like though, like so many of history's what we recognize now as the greatest films ever have started out this way.
Sure.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
So it is to a degree to be expected.
But like to Carol's point, it's nice, so you look at like someone like Roger Ebert, who was like the pinnacle of film criticism, but later in his career would then write books and articles being like, hey, these are all the movies I was wrong about. And he would like re-review them and be like, when I saw this movie, I kind of felt like this, but then I watched it again and I actually realized I was wrong. But I just like, nobody reviewing on Rotten Tomatoes ever does that.
Yeah.
Everyone's just like, I saw it once and I wrote a review like 10 seconds after because I had to be first to the punch, and now I'm never going to think about the movie again. Yeah. And it's, I don't know.
And so much of film criticism as well is just like the context of the era that you're writing in.
Yeah.
So obviously this movie, like, it doesn't specifically talk about it in the movie itself, but it's obviously a commentary on like climate change.
Yeah.
Later down the line, I'm sure this movie will become more important in that regard.
100%.
As well,
100%.
Even than it is now.
100%. And I also think in the climate it came out in, like you're thinking about 2014, like 2014 to me is sort of peak everything
movies.
Everything, well, first of all, it is a fantastic year for movies in general, but also like this is the era, this is like right before The Force Awakens. This is like right around Jurassic World. This is the era of like IPs are coming back in a massive way, and we're all excited about that because it's like, oh my god, we're living in the best era to be a fan of like franchises. And I think now we're sort of over that hurdle of like, oh my god, like I can't watch another fucking Star Wars movie. And so to have this completely original movie like come out now, I think would have really hit people in a better way. I'm not expecting an IP, like I'm just so refreshed to see such an original story done well.
Because that was, like Star Wars was 2015, Jurassic World was 2015, the second Avengers movie was 2015.
Yeah.
All of these, like, either sequels or comebacks of these huge franchises. And then, like, we had Blade Runner 2049 a couple years later, and it's like...
Also, like, the whole DCEU, which obviously now we know is a joke, but at the time, like coming off of Man of Steel and just hearing about...
It could have worked out eventually,
hearing about what Batman v Superman was, like, that was exciting. I was like, we're about to get now a DC universe the way we have a Marvel universe. Like, I'm sure that'll be great. Wah, wah. But, like, it was the era of, like, oh my god, I can't wait for more IP. And, like, this random sci-fi movie comes out from a guy that, by the way, just made a trilogy of IP movies. So I think there was a lot of disappointment in like, that sort of sense that, I mean, what can you do?
Should we actually get into the movie?
Yeah.
Or actually, did you want to talk about... Should we start with how this infected our physics class?
Yes. Well, I want to talk a lot about how the reviews, I think, it influenced the way this movie was seen. Because, so I should say... And I think a lot of this episode is just going to be a history lesson about our lives. Cause, like,
a history lesson about us three very uninteresting people.
Yeah, but also, like, this is the movie that I feel like you either love and are here because you love, and we'll definitely touch on.
There's probably not many people who are going to be like, I wonder if I should... I'm going to listen to see if I should watch
what's this Interstellar thing? Like, no, we all know what it is.
There might be some, but...
Yeah, and, like, we will definitely talk about the movie, absolutely. But I think the context around it is also fun, so, like, we should.
Yeah. And I always enjoy when we bring the discussion outside of just the movie itself.
Me too.
I mean, I personally also love it. I could talk about us all day long.
Me too. Well, I'm always flummoxed by, like, this is almost a 10-year-old movie. If you just want analysis on this movie, there's a lot. There is more than enough out there. Like, we will definitely talk about the movie, but
that might be part of the reason why subconsciously we don't do, like, new releases all the time. We do movies that have been analyzed, we're looking back at, and we want to share some of our context.
Yeah, it's more personal that way, which is, like, I really hate the idea that, like, it's possible. There are some things you can talk about in film that are not personal, but so much of film is personal, and I don't like the idea that it's possible to talk about it contextless. Like, it's not. There's always a context to it. There's always a context to what your day was when you were watching the movie, what was going on around it, and, like, to not acknowledge that is, like, dumb. Like, it's like there is inherently something you bring to it when you see a movie. It's not just
it's a collaborative effort.
Yeah, and I feel like film is like the one thing people don't get that about. Which, okay, this is like a sidebar tangent. We can cut this out, but like I just would like to talk.
Topical.
I'd like to talk with you guys about it. Like, so like if you are into visual art, absolutely there is the idea that like this is objectively a nice piece of visual art, but there's also, everyone acknowledges the context you bring to it of like, I like this type of art. I like
what does this mean to you?
Yeah, exactly. And I would even argue video games, I think everyone gets that as well.
Oh yeah.
In so much as you could say your favorite video game of all time is, I'm just pulling games, like The Last of Us. And then...
That's fair. Well, I'd probably say The Last of Us Part 2.
Sure. And then I could say it's Portal 2 for me.
Yeah.
And there wouldn't be this debate about, like, how could you say it's... It's like, those are two completely different games trying to do different things, and you bring... Like, I like problem-solving games, you like really narrative-driven games, whatever.
Mine's Diddy Kong Racing, in case anyone was wondering.
Ooh, very nice. Once again, very valid pick. Like,
yeah.
But with movies, I do feel like there is this thing where everyone tries to make it objective in terms of, like, if someone said their favorite movie was, like, a comedy movie, I feel like they'd be like, that's your favorite movie, bro?
A comedy movie can't be the best movie of all time.
Yeah, and it's like, why are we trying to make it objective? Like, of course there is inherent subjectivity and, like, context and bias.
Why can't it be like music, where any, like, whatever
go.
genre you think is the best is your favorite, and, like, it's totally
I mean, people
fine
still,
with
like,
people.
shit on people for that, though.
They do. I mean, okay, people do that in every medium to some degree, but especially with movies.
I feel like movies is the worst. Like, because, like, if I run into someone that absolutely loves country music... Like, I don't get that.
You don't despise their...
No, I'm going to be like, okay, so you are a country music fan.
Yeah.
I'm not. I get that. I'm not going to recommend any of my music to you. We're going to move on with our lives. But with movies, it's like people can't let it go. It's like you have to watch this one really weird fucking French drama from 1942. And it's like, but you know I'm not into that. Why are you recommending that to me? Like, it's okay. Like, I get that that's a really impactful movie for you. But, like, yeah, it's just... It's very frustrating. So that's why, at least for me, I always try to bring a lot of our personal context to these discussions as well. It's because, like, I think it's relevant to people, especially if people disagree with us.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of times in interviews, it's like, fuck this, and then you leave, and it's like, I would much rather be like, here's our context, and now let's say fuck this. So if you do disagree with us, and you do love it, like with the Zack Snyder things we shit on, it's like at least you understand where we're coming from, and we're not coming from a place of just trying to piss you off.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. All of that is to say. So, in grade 12, this was really the year of us having a movie watching, like, squad.
Yeah. This is where it started. Like, our physics class in particular, for some reason, we're all a bunch of, like, film fans. Yeah.
And so, like...
Well, it was all the nerds, so, like,
nerds
were the biggest film fans.
So, we sort of would just do this thing of, like, once a week, basically, of the vast majority of our physics class would go and, like, grab wings or something, and then we would watch a movie.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, Buffalo Wild Wings. Sponsor us. And we would go...
Never gonna happen.
Next episode, we're like, do you like spicy wings? Anyway, so yeah.
Honey garlic are better.
Yeah. So that was sort of the context of, like, we would just see whatever a new release was coming out. Like a drama, a comedy, whatever. But, like, we just like to go to the movies. People started to have their driver's licenses.
Yeah.
It was sort of like we can finally do things on our own era, so we would go see movies.
Yeah, it was we're adults now, so we're gonna try and act like it.
Also... I have a bone to pick, which is that okay. So we would all do this together, right? And then there was one day where I showed up to physics class, and you guys were all talking about Gone Girl. You were like, what a great movie, what a great time. And I was like, what? And then you guys were like, oh yeah, remember when we saw Gone Girl last night? And I was like, no, I wasn't there. And then they were like,
weren't?
no, see, nobody knows. And then everyone was like, dude, you were there last night. And I was like, no, I fucking wasn't. And yeah, I think it was just one of those things where, because, like, I obviously love to see movies and would go see movies, I think everyone was just sort of like, yeah, he would be there. Someone's going to mention it to him.
It just got missed.
That nobody did.
That was actually, there was a similar thing. You guys saw Kingsman without me.
Yes.
And,
it was the exact same thing. Yeah, just like, yeah, of course we would invite Dan. And then it was like, oh yeah, I guess nobody mentioned it to Dan.
Oh God.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Anyway, to this day, I've still never seen Gone Girl.
Oh, really?
No, yeah.
You should check it out.
You should watch it, and I'll retell the story. So anyway, that was sort of what we were doing in grade 12. And, November is my birthday month. This movie came out in November. And, we didn't know a lot about it. All we knew was that it was like a sci-fi movie from Christopher Nolan coming out like the weekend of my birthday. And I was like, that's awesome.
Ding, ding, ding. That's perfect.
Yeah. And then a bunch of the pre-reviews sort of came out. And it was this weird mixed bag of people being like, what is this? It's slow. And then like there was other stuff going on too as well of like one of our friends was busy, another one of our friends was busy. And so it all just sort of ended up being like, nah, we're probably not going to go see this movie. And I was like, well, fuck it. I really like science fiction and I just want to give it a go. So this is the first movie I ever went to see by myself.
Oh, really?
The first time. I went on my birthday weekend by myself. Please do not feel sad for me. It was a great experience.
Man, if I'd known...
I know.
I mean, like...
It's okay.
We ended up going anyway.
We ended up going anyway, but at the time, it was sort of like everyone was busy with something, and this movie had weird reviews, so I didn't want to be like, it's my birthday, come watch the movie with me. I was like, that's fine, like, I get it. Nobody wants to waste their money. Again, we're in grade 12, we're all broke, so, like, I respect that. So I went to see it. Changed my life forever. Absolutely love this movie. And let's just get into what I mean by changed my life. Like, outside of just it being a great movie that is now, like, my favorite movie. You have to remember, like, grade 12 is obviously very much like a transitional period of, like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life type thing. And also, like, who's going to be in your life after? Like, are you going to move away? Like, which of your friends are going to move away? Like, Carol's in Ottawa right now. Like, so all these things are sort of addressed in this movie of Cooper being like, I fucking hate my life because I'm a farmer, but I've always wanted to do this one thing and I never got to do this one thing. And also, like, dealing with the loss of, like, people that you care about. And also just the fact that this movie, outside of those themes, is very much a physics movie. And I was sort of on the cusp of, like, obviously loving physics and science stuff, but feeling kind of like, I don't know, maybe like I should do writing or something like that. But after seeing this movie, I was very much, it just hit on all those themes of like exactly what I was feeling, and so it was a very emotional experience. And then also the physics stuff was really cool. So I was like, yeah, I love this movie, and this is what reaffirmed me to major in engineering after seeing it, because he was such a badass. Although I've never had to dock a plane while another space station was falling down on me, but
maybe one day.
Maybe one day. Yeah, so I came out of this movie and immediately kind of texted our friend group of guys and was sort of like, we have to go see this movie together. I was like, I know we couldn't go this weekend, that's fine. You guys absolutely have to see this movie. And you guys were all like, all right, whatever. We all went to see it. Coming out of that, you guys all also absolutely loved the movie.
With a couple, like, there were two people who were exceptions.
Oh my god.
I don't think we should mention.
I won't mention their names, but all I'll say is,
because it's embarrassing.
They were shitting on it the entire time, to the point where someone else in the theater was like, can you shut up? And then they just left the theater. But also, they're not like film buffs.
No.
So, yeah. But yeah, and then that was such a great experience. We had all kind of joked and talked about like, oh, we should get our physics teachers to take us on a field trip.
Yeah, and it was a joke.
And it was a joke, but one of our physics teachers, actually both of them have Twitter, and like I follow both of them on Twitter, and they follow me.
By the way, when we say both of them, we mean the grade 11 teacher who we still like talk to.
Yeah,
and like he would come into the class often because he was friends with our grade 12 physics teacher. So them, like those two.
Yeah, and also our grade 11 physics teacher is a huge nerd. He took us to a comic book store on a field trip in grade 11.
Yes.
So like
that was one of the aforementioned field trips that we ever went on.
Yeah, so like I knew he would be into it, but the grade 12 one, I was kind of like, I don't know. So anyway, I tweeted at the grade 12 one. And I'll see if I can pull that tweet and we'll share it on the Instagram. But I basically...
Just blur the name out.
Yeah, I'll blur the name. I was basically just like, I mean, I'm sure he doesn't give a shit, but I'll blur it out anyway. But I was basically just like, hey, a lot of physics in this movie. Maybe we should go see it. And then like the next day in class, him and the grade 11 teacher were talking about it. And then they came up and talked to me and were like, so like, actually, you think we should go see it? And I was like, yeah, man, let's do it. And then it started as a grade 12 class
They really
trip.
trusted us, huh?
Yeah. I think they just didn't want to teach for a day. But like knowing people now that are becoming teachers, I'm like, oh, okay. You know what I mean? Like you always think of teachers as like these grand, like reverent figures, but it's like, no. I mean, they're just, it would be like if Dan and I were teachers and we were like, yeah, let's go see a movie. Who cares?
Just, can we find one nugget of something that would make it like pertinent to the class?
Exactly.
And then it's like, sure, let's go see the movie.
So it was supposed to be our grade 12 physics class. But then what happened was, I'm assuming, because it got opened up to the entire grade 12 year. And I assume what happened was they just didn't have enough money of people going to justify the cost of doing it.
Probably.
So they had to open it up to more people so that way they could get a better deal on buses, et cetera, whatever.
And renting the movie theater.
And renting the theater. So our entire class went to see this movie.
Except me.
Except you, unfortunately. But you had seen it before.
I was the sole person in grade 12, probably not. That
no, probably not. But yeah, I mean, we went to see it, and again, like I said, like the biggest non-nerd people, jocks, people that like legitimately don't even care about movies, or like maybe watch comedy movies and like get high and watch comedy movies. Like, these are the people we're talking about, and like this being my third time seeing it, I very much was just sort of watching everyone else watch it because I wanted to see the reaction. I was like, what are these fuckers gonna think? And like everyone loved it. Multiple, again, like football player guys were like bawling their eyes out, like watching it, and I was like, nice. And then we all went for food after, and just like,
you guys went for food? Oh man, where'd you go?
Arby's?
Like, I don't know, just like fast food restaurants.
Yeah, that was part of the field trip.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, I think it was more like it's.
I think
lunchtime,
people
so
with
just go have
cars
lunch.
just went. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't think the buses took us to food.
Drove me. I'll bleep the name out.
Yeah.
And so she drove us, and I think Miguel and a few of the other guys, and we went and got food. Anyway, but yeah, we just sort of like talked about the movie, and like all these people that I basically never talked to were just like coming up to me and asking me about the movie and being like, dude, that's like the best movie I've ever seen. Like, could you explain this or this? And it did become this thing of like in physics class sometimes, just like talking about stuff that happened in the movie, or like how realistic was that, or like let's do the equations to see if like this actually works out, which I also have a picture of, and I know I have a picture of it, so I will definitely share that to the Instagram when this episode comes out as well. Yeah, I mean, it's just like it completely took over our entire class, like our entire generation of students there.
The graduating class.
Yeah, and then what was even cooler, and I mentioned it before, but like going to university and meeting Rob and finding out that like, oh, it also took over your grade 12 class. And so like,
you didn't meet him till university?
No, I didn't meet Rob. I met him like first day university. Like
Oh.
we had mutual friends, but we had never really hung out, and so they introduced us when we were both in engineering together. But yeah, and so it was just sort of this thing of like, oh, I guess this is just very much like a young person versus old person thing to a certain degree. Although not even that, because my parents love this movie. Like, I feel like anyway, I don't know. We already touched on that side of it.
Yeah.
But it definitely hit for our generation, I feel like. And, you know, a lot of that is the themes of this movie, which are, like we said, like, leaving home and doing the thing that you're supposed to do, and, like, having to say bye to people that you love. Like, yeah, I mean, obviously being in grade 12 and watching all that, it definitely hits. But we're sort of way beyond that now, and watching it again, I feel like it all still hits. So,
yeah.
I don't know.
I kind of forgot how, like... Sorry. I forgot how apocalyptic this film was. Like, as dumb as it sounds, because I haven't seen it in so many years, I remembered, like, obviously they were, like, going to space, but I didn't, like, remember how bad it was on Earth, because I guess I just haven't thought about this movie and why they would be going to space. Obviously, that's why, to find a new home, but I forgot that that's why they went. And so I was like, oh, right, this is about, like, the planet is no longer going to be able to sustain humanity in a bit. Like, oop. I forgot that was the plot. And yeah, I think even seeing that now, especially in the era of movies like that Adam McKay one that everyone hated. What was it?
Don't Look Up?
Oh, the brand new one?
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, me neither.
It's okay?
Yeah, it's
cool.
I don't like to talk about it.
Okay.
I don't like to talk about it, but it was okay.
In the 4 months since it's come out, I don't like to talk about it.
Well, because, like, it's, I don't know, it has all these, like, A-list celebrities, and, like, I get the point. It is very much like a the world is ending, like, pay attention type thing, and it is very much like preaching to the choir. Because
I have heard it's very preachy, yeah.
It's
but,
just
like, the message is good.
Yeah, the message is good, but it's just, like, I don't know who it's for, because everyone who's going to watch it knows that the Earth is dying, so, like, what's the like, especially with the cast of people, it's all, like, these liberal-ass actors, like, no one who doesn't believe in climate change is going to be watching this and be like, oh, you changed my mind, like, good job. So, anyway, it was, like, entertaining, it was, like, pretty, like, fluffy, honestly, but, like, it just ended, and, like, because, obviously, I understand the severity of the issue, it ended, and I was like, I hate that I just watched 2 hours reminding me of how bad it is and how no one's ever gonna pay attention. Like, cool. Yeah. But anyway, besides the point. But in an era where movies like that are being made, I feel like, yeah, this would definitely hit harder if it came out now, is the only point I was trying to make.
Because it doesn't hit the idea direct, like it doesn't hit it head on. It gives like an analogy for it. Obviously. It creates this it creates this like fake or fictional world where something similar enough is happening.
There is a environmental crisis. It's not
the climate change that we're experiencing in real life, but
it's more like something has happened. It's like we've reached the end. I mean, there's the line that I love of like driven by the unshakable faith that the earth is ours or whatever, or like humans like started on earth but were never meant to die on earth, like, which, I mean, to go on a mini rant is like, I know you and I have talked a lot about like space travel and like how important
the future of space travel,
like how important it is, but also, and just to clarify, I'm not talking about Jeff Bezos like launching himself into the atmosphere in a dick rocket, or Elon Musk. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, we've specifically talked about the importance of like to have actual funding, like government funding into research and development of that type of tech for a lot of the things that this movie brings up, which is another reason that I love this movie, which is you almost can't separate them. And I feel like sometimes people try to separate it in terms of either we focus on our problems here or we come up with an escape plan. And I like the idea, and the movie doesn't say it specifically, but it really implies it with that school teacher scene at the beginning of like, the more that you try to separate those two things, the less overall education you get
on either one.
And so there is that thing at the beginning of like, yeah, we fake the moon landings and fuck space and yada yada, and it's like you're actually like making people less educated by doing that, and you're actually learning less about what could potentially help you by doing that. And like, it's a broken record, but you think about a lot of the technology that specifically came from funding space travel in the 60s and stuff like that, and how it's like, when you fund that type of stuff, you accidentally end up creating other technology that can be used for other things, like in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. So, and this movie I think does a really good job of touching on that, and on how, hey, we fucked up because we like stopped funding science, like any type of science. We basically just stopped funding science, and we were like, we put our heads in the dirt and we're like, yeah, let's just do almost literally, and like the dust, and like let's
put our heads in the dust.
Put our heads in the dust. And let's just hope for the best and do what we've always done, which is also really kind of scary with COVID stuff right now, where it's like, all right, we're done. Like, it's a random Monday, and no more masks and no more anything and everything. And it very much is sort of like, I guess we're just done. And it's like, why? And like, that's the vibes I get from this movie too, of, okay, I mean, we're just gonna stop, just science, whatever. We're just gonna keep farming. It'll be okay. And it's like, okay. But it is very relevant.
And like, with this topic or any topic, like, you could talk about climate change. You could talk about like, now one of the newest things is this anti-mask thing with the last 2 years of COVID, right?
Yeah.
You could talk about the fucking Flat Earth Society.
Oh my God.
that one to a less degree is like, for what I'm about to say. But like, these things are, people always say just ignore them.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, you should ignore them, but they're still damaging, even just that they exist. Like, these beliefs that climate change isn't real, it's more damaging than you might think. Like, you sometimes can't just ignore it. Like, I think of that clip that you showed me from the newsroom where Toby Flenderson from The Office comes on the show.
Yes.
Like,
that's a fantastic
he's
scene.
Like, he's like, the Earth is dying, and the other guy's like, so what can we do to stop it? He's like, nothing. We missed our chance because we're all idiots, and we haven't believed the scientists that were telling us what's real. Like, we're fucked. We have to wait this out, and it's gonna happen.
I like when he's like, okay, so what if we do this and this and this? And he's like, oh yeah, that's great. If we did that like 20 years ago, that would have been fantastic. Yeah.
And then the best part of that clip is at the end, where he's like, thanks for having me on. I had a good time.
That is, the newsroom is a mixed bag of a show, but that is like a fantastic.
Yeah, I've never seen the actual show. But.
Yeah. But yeah, exactly. I mean, and this movie, I just love the way it touches on it, of like, science is important, and like, it's really hard to distinguish. And when you try to distinguish and be like, we're only going to do this one thing, you lose so much by just doing that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's great. And it leads to like one of my favorite hype moments of him finding the facility and being like, what is this? And Michael Caine being like, This is
the
NASA.
best kept secret in the world.
It's NASA, bro.
Yeah.
Like, that
Well, I also
is
find
so
it
hype.
hilarious that initially this professor who he recognizes, he's like, wait, are you going to kill me? Like, where does he think he is in this high-tech, like,
Yeah.
area
That did
with
feel
this
a little bit
scientist?
Especially-
not in the mob, like...
Especially because, like, I understand when he was first captured and he's just talking to TARS.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, there, when he was like, please don't let anything happen to me. But once Anne Hathaway
Yes.
shows up and is like, your daughter's fine, let's just go talk. Like, I know, and he's just sitting in a boardroom with these unassuming men, and he's like, he covers his daughter's ears, and he's like, we gotta make sure we get out alive. Like, I need assurances. And they're like, dude, like, calm down. Like, we're not, like, yeah, for sure. It is a little bit silly of him.
Okay, wait, and then, sorry, just because it kind of came up, and I want to talk about it with you guys, and we don't even have to keep this in the episode, but I genuinely just want to know. So, obviously, the whole point of this is the Earth is dying, they want to find a new home for humanity, either, like, actually bringing the people there, or doing the bomb of DNA, or whatever the fuck they had, you know. Do you think we should do that?
Like,
To,
if it
like,
comes to
save
that?
humanity?
Like,
'Cause
right
I don't
now?
know, no, just, like, in general, ever. Because, I don't know, I'm always of the belief of, like, listen, we're just a species of animal on this planet. When we go extinct, we go extinct. Whether it's because we're fucking idiots and will not stop climate change, like, that sucks. But, like, we are just another animal on this planet, and we did this to ourselves, and I would hate for everyone's ancestors of ancestors to die, but, like, that's
Okay,
just
this is a good point.
part of the cycle, you know?
I agree. Despite the fact that I like the message of this movie and it's, like, hopeful, I would agree with what you're saying. Like, I don't think we should be given another shot to ruin another
So it's
planet.
like, who are
Sure.
we to, like, think that we now deserve to colonize this other foreign planet and just do this all over again?
I'm with you. On
Okay,
this.
I just wanted to check.
But yeah, like Marco mentioned, we've had conversations just about, like, isn't it gonna be so cool when we can actually, like, do you think we're gonna live to see, like, Mars colonization or
Yeah.
something? It's fun to talk about, you know, and think about where it could go in like the lifespan that we have left. Like,
Yeah.
just to think about if we'll actually be able to see it before we die. But yeah, that's a higher question that is fair to bring up for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think of in, like, there's two different ways to think about it. Like, for me, no, like, I don't think humans are important enough. Like, it's a very self-important thing to be like, we're the most important thing ever, and so we need to make sure that the human race lives on. Like, not in that sense, no, like, and also, yeah, the idea of, like, just going from planet to planet and fucking them all up, like, again, in that sense, no. But at the same time, I do think I think you learn a lot about yourself by, like, seeing other things and going to different, like, we all know that. That's why everyone's always like, it's like, at some point it's important to move out and to, like, travel and to do all those things. So, like, even on a small scale of Earth, there are all these differences, and so everyone's always like, go see other things. And so, yeah, like, I do think it's important to go see other things. In terms of, like, a colony on another planet, again, it's a fun concept. I don't really care. Like, my whole thing would be, I could understand setting up, like, a scientific, like, outpost to be like, we're gonna study the geography of this planet, or the geology, whatever, we're gonna take samples, we're gonna do that. I get that more. I'm definitely not of the opinion of, like, let's just take everyone that's left on Earth and move them somewhere else to fuck that up. Like, no, I don't think that's necessarily worthwhile. But then I also, the other side of it is, if we're not important, which we're not, like, we are just fucking animals, so, like, it doesn't matter. But, like, there definitely is other life elsewhere in the universe, and I would find it very sad if the human race died out and we did not experience other life somewhere in the
Yeah,
and so that's
like, it's these interesting concepts that keep me, like, I don't want, like, for those reasons I think we should continue to explore for sure.
Yeah.
Even if, like, colonization is taking it too far, like, straight up colonizing new planets, but I'm definitely for the exploration of.
Me too.
Ditto. I'm all for, like, acquiring new knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, I do think that is of a benefit, and even if
And it
it's
puts you
not
into
to, like,
perspective.
find a new planet, yeah, we can still learn valuable lessons from
Of course.
other neighboring planets.
Yeah.
And I do still think it would be cool to meet some aliens.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what I come down to is sort of like whenever people talk about the idea of like...
Guys, UFOs have already been here. It's
I know.
Fine. We just
Yeah,
need
I mean, that's just like information that's straight up just officially
It's
been
just a
released
fact,
now.
yeah.
Yeah. So we've basically met them.
Basically, almost. Yeah, I think sometimes it becomes an all or nothing thing of like either we live on another planet permanently or we just don't do space. And I'm like, no, there is a middle ground of let's have an outpost where we can send people to as like a middle ground to then either go further or to just study about that place. And it doesn't have to all be like we're moving the human race somewhere or we're not. And it's not from the perspective of like we're so important, like God forbid we ever die out as a species. But
we just want to learn more.
Just learn, just exist.
It's like Star
as a
Trek.
species.
The prime directive of like don't fuck with aliens and other cultures and stuff, but like just learn about different planets and stuff.
Just learn. And I would also like to think that, again, like I think the idea of humans being in like interplanetary, like we're across different planets as a species, like that's cool. But again, not in the sense of like if it happened naturally, if that also makes sense, of like discovering alien life and depending on what that alien life is, like having an outpost there with like some humans or whatever, but not in the sense of we're just
like you're saying the aliens want to like hang out with us. So
sure,
yeah,
like Star Trek, like we have a place on that planet where we can go visit, or like
like we could have an embassy, or like we could just even like commingle, like we could stay in a hotel.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean.
Aliens and humans in it.
Yeah, So in that sense, yeah. But I'm definitely not. Yeah. We'll just leave it there.
Also, I realize a hotel is a very human
all of this. I mean, aliens would probably not be humanoid, but like, still.
That's another.
Marco, have you watched Ad Astra yet?
Not yet. I gotta watch it.
I told him to watch it.
Yeah, I still gotta watch it. It's on the list. Maybe I'll watch it. I won't watch it.
Just checking.
Plus.
Oh, it is?
That's where I watched it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I get to get around to it. Yeah, that's sort of where I'm at with space travel and stuff. But yeah, that's why I always joking about Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, where it's like everyone Bezos.
I've never heard it pronounced that way.
Well, that's the way I'm gonna pronounce it. Barry B. Bezos.
Bezos and Musk.
And Musk. Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Like, we don't have to have a colony on Mars. We don't have to, like, move half of human life to Mars. We can just, like, have an outpost there from which we can go further into the universe. And, like, you can leave some scientists there to do science stuff there. Like, that's fine. But, yeah. And if we learn stuff that lets us, like, keep Earth going on longer, great.
Yeah.
Like,
true.
Also great. And, also, if an asteroid hits Earth, I mean, that sucks. What are you going to do? But, like...
It's just the natural...
Yeah, and if we come up with new science to be able to deflect asteroids from hitting Earth, also great.
Oh, like a force field around the Earth?
Like a force field, like some type of just anti-asteroid device, because we don't have one. And just so everyone knows, I know everyone's like, we'll just launch a nuke at it. That would not work. If an asteroid, just PSA, if an asteroid big enough, like the one that wiped out the dinosaurs, was heading towards Earth, like we would see it 10 years out, and we would have absolutely no way of doing anything about it, other than just like waiting for it to hit us. There's legitimately nothing. There is no asteroid protection plan. That does not exist. So, like, just be prepared. But, yeah, I mean...
Cool. Thanks,
just
Marco.
be prepared.
Yeah, like, I'm not... I get what you guys are saying. Like, for me, it's like... if the human race lives on forever, which it won't, because at some point the entire universe is going to collapse, great. But, like, if we die in 5 years, cool. I'd be happy. So...
Well, that's the thing. I understand, like, the viewpoint of this film. Like, obviously, those remaining on Earth, and especially the scientists who feel like they have, the resources to build this ship and explore these planets. Like, of course, they're in, like, fight or flight. So they're like, yeah, we want to save ourselves.
Yeah,
duh. Like, if you have the resources to try to save yourself, you will. Like, we're animals, of course. That's in our nature.
Yeah.
So I get that. I'm not saying that's an issue or something I thought about in the movie at all. Yeah. It's just more of a philosophical conversation I wanted to have in general.
I've thought a lot about that too.
Well, and I even think, like, even the idea of them leaving in this movie, in and of itself, is also just sort of a metaphor for, like...
Trying to fix what we broke. Like, if we fund science and let, like, scientific people be smart, like, maybe we could, have a chance.
On Earth.
And in this fictional movie, like the Earth is too far gone.
Of course.
Most would argue also in real life it is, but like to much more of a degree. Like it's beyond saving, so that's why in the movie they have to like
for sure
search elsewhere.
For sure agreed.
So we're gonna talk about the movie now, or what?
I mean, we're an hour in.
The plot.
We talked a little bit.
We have. We definitely have.
So Cooper, played by Matthew McConaughey in this movie, is the world's best farmer, engineer, physicist,
pilot,
everyone. He's the world's best everything, except when he actually gets to space, at which point he forgets all his physics.
He's the worst on the team.
Because we need to be explained physics to him, which is a very minor gripe. It's not even a gripe. I'm fine with
we
it.
even talked about this, and it's like, I like that it was probably intentional that when he's like on the scenes on Earth, he's like, he's the best at everything, and then he joins up with these other scientists, and he realizes how little he knows.
Yes,
I think that was probably
because like he's been just a farmer for like part. Mm-hmm. It's not like he's constantly practicing and studying.
Correct.
Space.
And I also think it's a realistic depiction of like what he is, which is like he's a pilot. Like by trade, he's a pilot, and like pilots go through physics and engineering training to a certain degree. And so I think it's a realistic depiction of like, you would know some, you would be able to understand being taught more because you need that baseline.
But like not all of quantum physics.
Correct. Yeah. So when he's asking questions,
being a pilot.
Yeah.
But he also says he was an engineer.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of pilots say that. I feel like that's a lot of things that like you have to take some engineering classes.
You think in that respect? I've always thought about like he actually had like a fully fledged, like you have an engineering degree.
I don't know, maybe because I know.
I think he must. I feel like just
then he's
in
an
the way he thinks and like when he like hacked that little Indian drone.
That's true. He did hack a drone. So like
we have
to
talk about that. We have to talk about that.
Yeah.
But also we don't know what type of engineer he was. He could have been like a structural engineer.
Well, if he's a pilot, he was probably just a mechanical engineer.
Aerospace engineer?
Or aerospace. Why did I say mechanical? He's definitely an aerospace engineer.
Physical.
At which point, he probably would not know the pure physics involved with, like, black holes and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, granted, like, I obviously, because I was very interested in physics, like, tried to still learn a lot about that stuff while I was doing my engineering, but you don't have to. You can't just be, like, a gearhead and become an engineer.
Course, yeah.
So, that's very true. That's a very good point.
Or even like there's engineers that like work on trains. Like the first engineer that I ever heard about when I was a kid was an engineer,
the train engineer,
whatever type that is. But probably very mechanical.
Locomotive.
Basically, yeah. Hold on, are we good?
Yeah, we're good. Okay. Yeah, I don't know why it said internet connection is bad. It's great. So let's just continue.
Let's just spectacular.
Continue.
All right,
spectacular.
Yeah, so he hacked a drone. This is one of the. That's probably like one of the only plot questions I have is like it happens very early in the movie, and I'm kind of wondering how, like, because he's driving a truck. First of all, he puts
and also he has this computer on hand to,
as he's driving the truck, and he has his two kids like in the front, which I'm pretty sure is very illegal.
It's
even lets Murph control the gear shift at one point.
I mean, I didn't see a single cop the whole time, so maybe cops are
no
abolished in this future.
I think so.
Actually, there's
whoa! By 2067, no more cops.
We did it.
Or crops. Amazing.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of the scene. This is something I didn't realize on my first viewing, where they go to the baseball game, and they're playing. It says that they're playing the New York Yankees.
Yeah.
And it's just this shitty little like small town baseball field.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this set in New York?
I know. I only noticed it like my second or third viewing ever, where I was like, "Oh, is that supposed to be what the actual Yankees team is now? Like this is them?" And that really puts it into perspective too. I guess the first time I just assumed it was like in Little League when they name your team after real teams.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Like I played on the Yankees when I was.
Yeah, because it's just like.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But no, it is more just like this is the state of baseball.
Yeah.
Because the world is
that was interesting. That was cool world building.
There's a lot of great. I mean, we talked about sort of the first 45 minutes or so of this is like really great world building.
Yeah.
I
even brought up the truck thing. Actually, a friend of mine, when we were watching this once, he pointed it out because he's like into trucks. Mm-hmm. But the truck that Cooper drives near the beginning that was like a new model at the time of the movie this came out, and they made it look like dusty and old because this was. Oh, and you even said
This is one of my favorite theories that like
go for it, yeah.
is not confirmed. But at one point when Cooper is talking to John Lithgow, I don't remember the character's name. Doesn't matter. Grandpa.
I don't think he ever is given a name.
Yeah.
Donald. No,
Donald.
he is.
Yes, Donald. How did I forget that?
Take care of my kids, Donald.
Yeah, take care of my kids. Can I have your truck, Dad? Fucking Timothy Chalamet. We'll get to Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah.
But when he's talking to Donald and Donald says, when I was young, it feels like there was something new being invented every day, some new gadget, whatever. And I've always taken that to mean that, like, Donald is our generation, and so that's how far in the future this movie is set. That's how
we know the year it's set.
Do we?
Yeah.
They ever say the year? What is it?
It was either on Wikipedia or IMDb, so I don't know how trustworthy it is, but it's
that's a lie.
2067.
Well, they definitely never say the year in the movie, but that
would
make sense.
That
though.
lines up. That's probably how they came up with the year, was being like
they extrapolated
that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so that's a fun piece of world building, because it's like, oh, so he's us, so this is how far in the future it is, and like everything has gone to shit.
Yeah, and going back to the
which is
truck
like
thing,
kind of terrifying, because it's like just over 40 years from now is like when in 2014 he decided to set this absolute like end of the world state to be.
Yeah, for sure. But like we'll all be dead. It'll be okay.
Yeah. I mean, we won't know. If
we won't deal with it. Yeah, exactly. Once you're dead.
Oh, you mean we will have, like, our generation will be gone?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. It'll be fine. Not our problem.
That's exactly the mentality that got us into this.
I know. I'm just joking. Obviously, I'm just joking. Everyone, nobody get pissed. But like,
going back to the truck thing though, with like John Lithgow, like that was probably his, and he passed it down to Cooper. Is what I would assume.
Yeah.
So that was cool. Just to put you into the perspective of where, like, the setting of this dystopian world.
For sure. Yeah, they do a fantastic job with all of it. And I like how much of this, and like Nolan, obviously we've talked about like the real, like he's all about realism and everything's real. And like that's fine. And I like how so much of this is influenced by like the 1930s like Great Depression era, and like the Dust Bowl of like they used to have these big like desert like sandstorm type things or whatever. So even the idea of like a lot of the, I was telling Dan this, but a lot of the When Harry Met Sally-esque like interviews that are in this movie with old people, a lot of those were taken from actual interviews of old people that lived through that.
You were right about that, by the way. I looked it up.
Perfect, because I had always heard that.
Ken Burns documentary about the Dust Bowl.
Yes. And so a lot of that, like, we had to turn the cups over because otherwise it would be, like, filled with dust in the morning. Like, that's all real stuff that happened. And so, but I think it works so well in this in terms of, like, grounding this very, very sci-fi, especially when you get to the end, movie, in this incredibly real thing that, like, people will understand because it's happened in history.
Yeah.
And so it feels like, oh, yeah, everything's fucked. Yeah, I get that.
It's also weird to think about, like, with that now, how we were talking about, like, older critics not getting this movie. Like, it's weird to think that even that part they couldn't connect with.
Yeah.
Not that they lived in the Great Depression area.
But, like, you would know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't get it either.
Not to go back down that
hole, but like, such good world building. And obviously...
Yeah, I love the world building in this movie. How just, like, it's not in your face. Like, it's subtle enough. And yeah, it's cool. I just like how they throw you into the world of this movie.
Yeah, I think the teacher scene, like with the principal, is fantastic. What an incredible, again, world building. Like we talked about with the science textbook, and like this textbook's out of date. We replaced it with a new one that's all pseudoscience, and just like even the idea of like, oh, we can only send like 12 kids a year to college. Like, we don't have the funds. Like, not everyone can be educated, which is funny because that's like the actual antithesis of what you would want to do to pull yourself out of a scenario like this. You would want as many people as possible to be educated, but instead it's like everyone else is just going to be a farmer. And
they're like, Tom's going to make a great farmer. Oof. It's very like, this is your assigned class. This is like you barely have a choice.
You know what's funny about that? Going back to the Nolan realism is I feel like so many dystopian sci-fi movies lean into that element of like, even with Man of Steel, of like, you were born to do this thing or this thing or this thing.
Yeah, like
you're a soldier, you're a scientist, you're a whatever. And this movie, like, that's almost Nolan's version of it. It's just to be like, we don't have enough resources.
Can you please be a farmer?
But it very much like, touches on that same idea of like, no, this is a dystopian future. Like, you can't.
Yeah, it's just not as overt.
It's not. But like, the American dream is dead.
Yes.
You know, like you can't like even, like, obviously, like, we all know the American dream is a bunch of bullshit, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, the idea of the American dream is dead, of, like...
owning a house and, like, doing your dream job and...
No, you're fucked. You're just gonna be a farmer. You're gonna work on your family's farm.
You're gonna farm corn.
Like, we've regressed to, like, the pre-industrial era.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
But it's also interesting because in that same scene, he's talking about, like, I still pay taxes. Like, why can't my son go to college? And they're like, that's not what the tax dollars go to. There's, like, no money in school. But then we see this gigantic NASA building, and they're like, how do you have the funding for this? And it's, like, totally secret. Because I guess, are we supposed to imply that most of the tax dollars are going to the secret NASA place instead of teaching the younger generation?
Well, definitely not, because they've given up on that. Right, like I would assume it's going into your agriculture.
No, but the building still has funding. Like they aren't.
It does.
These
Yeah, I
people
mean,
into space for nothing.
it's still funded, but it's not. I definitely think it's not like a huge percentage of, for example, the tax money or like.
He does say, he's like, because I think Cooper asks him. He's like, why don't we know about this? And he's like, because if people knew that their tax money was going towards this, they would be upset because they're all dumb and they don't understand what we're trying to do. So, like, there's definitely, like, a portion of it. Yeah. But, yeah. I feel
it's probably, like, a hybrid, like, partially privately funded.
Yeah.
Like, and then kind of what NASA is today of, like, publicly.
For sure. Because you got to imagine, like, if they did have literally all the funding, like...
Why would we be in this situation?
They would be in way better shape. Yeah. Because they are very, like, oh, we can only do this trip once, and, like, we're fucked.
Yeah,
whatever,
that's
whatever.
the other thing, too.
Yeah.
It's, like, one shot. That's all we have.
Yeah. Which is also a fun little... That's always a good, like, stake raiser in a movie, to be like, this is their one shot.
This is NASA's last stand.
This is NASA's... what's the eminent? This is NASA's Lose Yourself.
Oh my god.
Anyway, yeah. Great world building. I like how we haven't even talked about space at all. We've just been like, isn't the Earth stuff? So it is cool though. It's really cool.
It's important to set that up before you go out and see how beautiful space is in this movie.
Yeah, for sure. And it does ground it because you spend so much time with weird sci-fi concepts. You really have to understand the world and like believe in Cooper's relationship with his children. And by his children, I mean Murph, because he absolutely does not give a shit about his son.
But Tom doesn't give a shit about him either.
And let's talk about that right now, okay? Which is the fact that this movie has a fantastic cast. Like almost everyone in this movie, even side characters, is like someone from something else. Like they're all great.
I think pretty much all of the main cast has an Oscar or has been nominated for an Oscar. It's insane.
Including young Tom, played by Timothy Chalamet, which is always funny to hear.
Fun fact, before this last viewing 2 days ago, I never realized it was him.
Really?
Yeah,
he has a different haircut. He's a lot younger.
He was way young. Yeah, he was super young. I mean, I don't think I realized it. Like, until this viewing. This is probably the first full viewing when I knew it was him, but I do remember, I think, just reading something about like Timothy's career, and like someone said Interstellar, and I was like, who the shit was he in Interstellar? And then I was, it's Tom.
That's how I found out too.
Yeah, but yeah, it's just so, and I get it, obviously, like this is a father-daughter relationship, this movie, like that is the crux of it. I understand that choice, but my god, do him and Tom just not have a relationship? Like, it is hysterical, dude. Like, he spends like 20 minutes hugging Murph and being like, I love you and I'm gonna come back for you and here's my watch and like everything's gonna be okay. And then he walks outside and he's like,
he gives Tom a hug.
And he's like, take care of my truck. Or no, Tom's like, can I
have the truck?
Tom's
and he's like, you mean your truck?
His last words to his dad are, can I have your truck? And he's like, yep. And then he leaves.
But then it's weird because he's the one who's leaving all the messages when he grows up and not Murph.
Yeah.
But also, is that a commentary on men's relationships with each other?
Yeah, probably.
It does. I mean, I will say it does feel like a father-son relationship. But it's just so heightened in this, like, this is the last time you're ever going to see this person.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Like, I that's what I think sets it off for me a little bit. Like, throughout the rest of the movie, when he's way more, like, personable with Murph and with his son, it's a little bit more, like, not like that.
It's an average day.
I get that. Like, I do get that as a father-son relationship. But yeah, it's more just like at the end when it's like, this is the last time I'm going to see you.
But I think also specifically in this case, it's because the son is more like on the farming path and he hates that about himself and he hates that his son is on that path. So instead of confronting that, and like he can't really do anything to change that, so it's better to just distance himself from it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, I think that definitely plays a big factor in it as well.
And when he left, he didn't know he'd never see them again.
He
didn't know when he'd be coming back.
Yeah,
it was hopeful.
But
yeah, for sure. But yeah, Tom, and then he ends up being played by Casey Affleck, which actually, in retrospect, was perfect casting. Because Tom is the pretty much only villain in this movie besides Dr. Mann, and like everyone hates Casey Affleck, so like that ended up being very good casting on their part.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. Also, though, for villains, there's kind of like Michael Caine.
Oh yeah,
he's a lying piece of shit that we find out.
Yeah, which we'll get into. But yeah, Dr. Brand, played by Michael Caine, who also has his daughter, the other Dr. Brand, Amelia Brand, played by Anne Hathaway. Which I do want to talk about Anne Hathaway. Like Dan and I, we chatted a little bit about this. About she gets kind of the short end of the stick in
her dialogue.
In the middle of the movie,
her performance
especially.
Is great.
Oh yeah, she's always good. But she gets a little bit of the short end of the stick. So we'll
get there.
We'll definitely dive into that when we get to that part of the movie. But yeah, I mean, you know, the world is shit. Oh, I want to drop in a fun fact here. This will be a good time to bring up the book, The Science of Interstellar, which is a book, fun fact, that Carolina got me for my birthday that year, because as soon as I came out of the movie, I texted everyone and was like, go see this movie's incredible. And so like 2 days later, when it was my birthday, you got me the book, so thank you. I have read the book. It is a very good book, and I honestly, like, even if you're not like a physicist, you could definitely gain something from this book. Like, I think Kip Thorne does a really good job of structuring it in terms of like, here's the main concept, here's how we get a little bit into the weeds of it, and then if you're really curious, you can get into like the hyper science, and there's like appendix sections with like the actual calculations and stuff you can look at.
Nice.
But like, if you're just overall curious about some stuff, I think the book does a good job of explaining it to a layman. So like, I would strongly recommend it to anyone that likes this movie. You can get something out of it, for sure. And there's lots of fun stuff. Also, the reason I bring this up is because he, in the book, kind of structures and calls out things that he actually thinks are sort of more or less scientifically accurate. And one of the things that he was actually the least scientifically accurate about, we talked about one. That's not the one I'm thinking of, Dan. The one he actually talked about was like blight being the reason that the Earth is sort of like dying. Because he was like, that's actually one of the least scientifically accurate things, where he's like, I don't think it would ever really get to this point. Like, this is a little bit of an exaggeration. Whereas stuff like the time dilation we see later in the movie is incredibly accurate, even though that's a more high concept thing. A lot of the less high concept things, like blight being the reason crops can't grow, he's like, yeah, that probably wouldn't be the case. That's actually a bigger leap than time dilation. So, yeah.
Well, even specifically with when they were saying that, like, they were sucking nitrogen out of the atmosphere and stuff, and for it to get to the point where it made the atmosphere like unbreathable for us would take, I think, like millions or billions of years.
Yes.
They were saying, and I also did my research.
Very good.
So they were saying, it's a pretty unrealistic way for us to die out.
Yeah.
Like, we'd probably die out sooner from like not having enough food, as opposed to like we can't breathe the air.
Which is just fun. It's just fun that in this super high concept movie, that incredibly simple thing is actually one of the least accurate things in the movie.
I would take that as a compliment, though, of like how well they like achieved these theoretical physics concepts.
Well, it's due to Kip Thorne, because he kept having to like reel Nolan in, because at one point Nolan wanted someone to like go faster than the speed of light, and he's like, I absolutely refuse to have this be part of the movie. It can never happen. There's no way.
Impossible.
I think it had to do with the climax. Like, I think the climax was originally supposed to be structured so that way Cooper could literally go back in time, as opposed to like
time, like
literal time travel. Yeah, and I think that if I remember correctly from the book, that's when Kip Thorne was like, no. We're not doing that. But and also like, and I guess this is a great opportunity to talk about something that I brought up a lot, which is the idea of like limitations making better art. And we've obviously talked a lot about this, but part of the reason I haven't loved a lot of Nolan's work after Interstellar is because I think he got to the point, much like George Lucas, where he was just Christopher Nolan and he could do whatever the shit he wanted. And even, you know, I know I haven't brought him up in a while on the podcast, which is weird, but Aaron Sorkin, I mean, it's been like, half a year I haven't even brought him up.
We talked
I
about the
think
newsroom.
Batman has distracted you.
Yeah, Batman's taken over.
It's one or the other.
It's always two there are, no less. Yeah, like, even his career a little bit has sort of become, like, you can do whatever the shit you want. And, like, there's definitely good stuff that comes out of that. But I always love to hear those stories of, like, if Nolan had made this movie without a science advisor like Kip Thorne, it probably would have been a worse movie. Like, it's him stepping in there and being like, hey, like, why don't you think about doing this instead or this instead, which ends up changing the way the story is structured and actually makes it function better. Because it doesn't turn into complete schlock. It doesn't turn into The Flash. So, yeah.
That's fair. I mean, even just on your point of avoiding a schlock ending, but also even besides that, just like the realism in this case is one of my favorite aspects. Whereas in some of his other movies, I think it's a little bit of a detriment.
Agreed.
Where it goes too far. In this movie, I think it's very beneficial for the source material.
Well, and I think realism, it's just a matter of using it correctly, if that makes sense. Like, we've talked a lot about the realism in his Batman movies being a little bit infuriating. Not infuriating, but
like, sometimes it's just, like, a little bit
too far.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with those in particular is, like, because we've just seen you can do a movie that still feels real without having it to be in Chicago, like, and
without like neglecting the style.
Yeah, and I think Nolan's best stuff, which for me is like Interstellar and Inception, both are these really high concept things that are still to a certain extent grounded in rules. Like, even with Inception, with the idea of dreams, it's like
there are strict rules,
and like a lot of those rules are made up, sure, but then there are real concepts brought into that, of like the whole idea of a kick being like an actual thing that like people experience and like thing that can wake you up. And so yeah, the ability to kind of like use a few grounded rules and then create something cool within that is, I think, when he's at his absolute best in terms of making movies.
Yeah, it's like he strikes that perfect balance.
Yeah. So, and this movie I think nails that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Are we leaving Earth now?
Let's leave Earth. Also, let's talk about...
We were never meant to die here.
Yeah, we were never meant to die here. Now would probably be a good time to talk about, I guess, like, old Michael Caine, Dr. Brand, and, like...
Sure.
Sort of what... So, the whole premise, obviously, being that there's two plans if we find another planet. One, we just population bomb it, so that way the human race goes on. Or two, if I can do my part and, like, figure out how to harness gravity the way that the people that place the wormholes harnessed gravity, then we could just take everyone off of Earth. So, like, Plan A and Plan B, which, as we will find out later in the movie, was always a hoax because he realized the information he needed to harness gravity could only be found inside a singularity, inside a black hole, which you could never get.
Impossible.
Which is impossible.
But is it?
Well, is it?
Here, I have a question, though.
Yeah.
That Plan A, how would that have worked? Like, how do you population bomb something? Because there's, like, human embryos, right?
Yeah, I had a question about that, too, because, like, is there artificial growth hormones, like, in Star Wars, the Clone Wars? Like, are you, like, creating people...
Like, planting humans?
Like, I don't...
In the soil?
Because it is just embryo... So, like... would the females you bring along... Like, how are you, like...
Is that actually, why Amelia's on the mission?
Just, like, yeah. Sprinkle embryos.
Is she having all these babies herself?
And it would grow a human being.
Yeah, like, there must be some other, and that they might have just not gotten into it to be. Well,
they never say population bomb, so it's left.
Do they not?
I think they do. I think they literally
said it specifically.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay, I thought you guys just like.
No, I
made that up.
I think she says population bomb. Like, she goes on a very hand-wavy thing when they're explaining the plan, and she's like, yeah, so we'll just, through surrogacy grow some, and then the growth becomes exponential. And I'm like...
Oh, surrogacy.
She does say surrogacy. I know she says
what,
surrogacy.
though?
But that's my question is, like, with whom? Because, like, you're the only female on this trip, so are you just gonna give birth to a bunch of fucking babies and then raise them all until they're old enough to have baby? Like, and
but
then
even then, she can only have one baby a year, unless, she's lucky and gets twins or triplets or something in there, but...
I mean, I guess you could do it in a lab. Like, the ship probably has a lab, right?
To, like, grow people?
Yeah.
I guess. But then she also brings up the idea of, like,
Can we grow people?
In this movie, maybe. Maybe. I don't know. You know what? Tell
I
you
don't
what.
think we can yet,
Tell you
right?
I feel like none of us really have any idea of what
No,
the
we
actual
don't.
point
We
is.
don't have
so
the answer to this question.
I'm gonna go later. I will take a look in the Science of Interstellar book and see if there's any explanation to what the actual plan was, and I will briefly summarize it here in the edit. Because we're just sort of guessing, because I feel like the movie doesn't do a great job of specifically explaining. So, yeah.
Okay.
We'll just throw that
leave
in there, so
for
we
now.
don't have to guess, because the movie just is hand waves
Yeah.
it. Surrogacy, population bomb, genetic diversity, colony. We're fine. Okay, great. Thanks, Anne Hathaway. Much like a lot of the rest of her dialogue in this movie, it is just sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, so there was nothing in the book about this. So I don't know. Really couldn't tell you. Sorry about that.
But yeah, so Dr. Brand.
The old Dr. Brand.
Yeah.
Big old liar.
Big old piece of shit.
He's a sham.
Yeah.
So the premise is he tells Cooper, here's a bunch of embryos that if you find a planet, these are that's plan A, or no,
That's plan B.
that's plan B.
Mhm.
No, sorry, yeah. Plan A is if by the time you find a new home for us, I will have figured out how to launch this ship with humans on it and solve the problem of gravity, meaning like you said, harness gravity.
Yeah.
Or manipulate gravity, I guess. Then that would be the ideal situation where we don't abandon everyone on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out that was always impossible in his mind anyway, so that was never going to happen, but he didn't tell the team that.
Yeah.
And we find out by Matt Damon later.
Oh, we'll talk about Matt Damon, yeah.
Matt Damon.
But that is a fun plot twist, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because you're not because even Amelia Brand sets it up when she's talking with Cooper when they first leave, and she kind of says we're not going to face evil out there. Nature is not inherently evil. We're going to face obstacles, but evil is man-made, which is funny because they do face evil, but it's from her father and Dr. Mann.
It's man-made.
It's man-made. That's a little heavy-handed, but it's fine. But
No, but it's spelled with two N's.
yeah, so it's different enough. Yeah. But it's cool that the major obstacles they face are both human created, which is obviously the
Drives
point.
home the message of the movie.
Yeah, drives home the message of the movie. And it's a cool plot twist.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm down with that.
One more quick thing before we move on to Miller's Planet or whatever is next. In the boardroom, obviously if you're watching this for the first time, you don't know yet that Matt Damon will show up in the movie. But when he's talking about Dr. Mann and he's pointing towards his picture, if you squint, you can see that it's a picture of Matt Damon. They don't do a close-up on it, obviously.
Yeah, because it's got to be a big surprise. But yeah. No, it's
Well,
cool.
yeah, I'm
That's cool.
surprised that they wanted it to be such a big surprise. Because they didn't have him. He didn't even do the red carpet. They're
No,
no
yeah.
secret.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely adds something to it because I think that reveal for the crew is supposed to be a hype moment because we've built up Dr. Mann is the best of us, and so I think having it be an actor that we know that we didn't know was in the movie gives the audience a little bit of cool, just how they're supposed to feel of cool.
Yeah.
And then when he betrays them, we feel they do of no, Matt Damon, don't do that.
Even though I feel we've all been betrayed by Matt Damon since, because
He did a crypto commercial.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure he's been caught up in some other.
Yeah. Well, he's buddies with Ben Affleck, so I can't
Yeah,
imagine.
and
And
Casey
Casey Affleck, who's in this movie, so I can't imagine he's the cleanest of guys. But anyway, yeah. So just quickly, I know I kind of made fun of him Cooper saying bye to Tom, which it is funny, so I'm glad I made fun of it. But obviously, the him saying bye to Murph scene is one of the handful of scenes in this movie that absolutely emotionally destroyed me.
Yeah.
And not just upon first time watching it, every time I watch it, it is so sad. And it's so well done and so well put together, and yeah, even just the whole setting up of the watch of here's a watch, and by the time I get back, we might be the same age, and her rejection of that, and him not getting to say bye to her, and also, Nolan movies, we've talked about in the past, are very not necessarily before this super visually inspired, and they rely a lot on like exposition, and this movie definitely has a lot of exposition, but there's also a lot of really good visual storytelling and like everything to do with the bookshelf and how you don't know what that is, but then when it comes back, it doesn't come back in a way of like explaining it. It comes back in the visual way. And then even the very basic setup of like the setup payoff of Murph hiding under the blanket in the truck, and then when he leaves, she's not like, he checks and she's not like, again, like that's just a very, very, very nice little visual thing that I think pays off really well, that in another movie would probably just be explained with dialogue and you'd be like, all right.
But also when he's leaving and she's like, I figured out the message, it was stay, and by the end we know he left that message for himself.
Yeah.
That also kind of broke my brain, because I was like, wait, but you know that she gives you the message and that you ignore it, so why did you leave it again in hopes of getting you to stay, because then you wouldn't be here, and
See, I always took it as, because that's the first thing he does when he gets in the Tesseract, is he writes stay, and I always took it as just like his knee-jerk reaction to be like, maybe I can change it this time.
He's still that's when he's still figuring it out what's happening.
Yeah, he hasn't realized yet that this is almost like predestiny, like it has to happen, so he's kind of like, maybe I can change it, but like, and then he realizes like, oh, I can't change it, I actually have to do X, Y, and Z, so that way we can get to this point, because we need to get to this point to survive. So yeah.
One quick thing about the watch in the first scene where he gives it to her, I think it would have been cool. It's just a little missed opportunity to have it be like already flickering, and she's like, it's broken, like it's not even.
Oh, that would have been really cool, and we don't know why the second hand is fucked up. Yeah, that would have been cool.
But then there's also what you talked about when he's in the Tesseract and he's like in the timeline where he's leaving, he's walking out the door and he turns back because present time Matthew McConaughey's banging on the other side. Yeah. And like makes the bookshelf like move. And he's like staring directly back at him. He's like punishing himself.
It's so good, because the first time you see that scene, he does just kind of turn and look at the book, and he's like, huh. Yeah. And then, when you get it that time, he stares directly down the lens, like right at you and at, his present self, and like, it's fucked. Yeah. It's really fucked, but like in the best way of like, oh man, nice. Again, very good visual storytelling, like not relying on just exposition, although like, with a movie like this, there has to be a lot of exposition, obviously, because it's so like high concept.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Cool. Very cool.
Anyway.
All right, let's get to space.
Yeah. So I really like that before we even get to the first like new planet, it's established that it's 7 years travel for them to even get to the wormhole. Yeah. That helps a lot with the scale of the journey that they're going on. Mm-hmm. It takes 7 years just to reach this point in our solar system. Yeah. That we can like then travel through this wormhole to leave and like go to another galaxy who knows how far away. Yeah, it's cool. Not even like they don't even say it's like the next galaxy over. They don't specify. No, it could be like halfway across the
exactly.
Well, because in theory, there's no way to tell if they're just accessing it by wormhole.
Yeah, that's what makes it scary almost.
Yeah.
True. It's cool
how vast space is.
And I also like how they use this first initial bit to be like to establish what the space travel is, because like. So up until this point, there's been a lot of high concept stuff, but it's like, so is this Star Trek space travel? Are we just going to get on a ship and fly around? But it's like, no, like this is a very, very realistic approach to space travel, even in so much as like the lander that they send up, like it has the 3-stage rocket booster thing, just like NASA currently does, or like not currently does, but like did when they were sending stuff into space, which then latches onto the actual big space station, and the idea that thing spins to create artificial gravity, which is like a theory that everyone has already like, it's always been a thing that like, oh, that would be cool if we could do that, if we could use like centrifugal force to like create artificial gravity, and just all the very like meticulous real detail of all that. I just think it's so cool.
Show you all that.
Oh, it's so cool.
The wormhole drawing.
Yeah, I mean the wormhole drawing is also great. Well, I think it's great because one, it became a meme in grade 12 of me and Aiden just constantly being like, so what do you want to get from here to here, and just ripping out a piece of it.
Too far.
Yeah, but it's too far.
Actually, this movie didn't invent that.
It didn't. No, it's been in a lot of other stuff, actually. Like, a lot of other space movies have used that same thing. But what I like, in very Christopher Nolan fashion, is, like, adding that other dimension to it, where... Literally adding the other dimension to it.
Oh,
where
yeah.
The idea that, like, a wormhole would be a 3-dimensional sphere. Which, like, nobody ever talks about. Like, everyone does the paper-to-paper, we're bending space-time, but, like... well, this is 2-dimensional. We need to translate that to 3 dimensions, so it wouldn't just be a hole in space. It would be a sphere that was actually like you could see the galaxy from all sides, which is one of the very first cool rendering images of like, oh my god, this is like trippy and fucked up. Like, but it's scientifically accurate. So,
yeah, it's so weird to think about like a 3-dimensional hole.
Yeah.
Of nothing. Like, it's like picturing nothing.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
visualize nothing? And how, like, you can picture a wormhole in 2 dimensions, but how do you even visualize that in your mind of
I know.
a hole
Yeah.
expanding in 3 dimensions?
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
it
that's
looks
the
cool.
thing. That's what I was saying. Like, space is something I try not to think about too much because it's just so totally overwhelming.
Yeah.
And total tangent. But I went to, I think it was at the Met or like one of the museums in New York, and they had a whole little room with a whole video about space narrated by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and it was one of those like complete like surround videos of it, and
Oh,
so you
yeah.
kind of just like sat back and like
Those
stared
dome
as he
theaters.
narrated about it, and I almost had a panic attack. I was like, it's too much.
Yeah, yeah.
I need to get out of here. It's too big.
Stay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's pretty fucked up.
Yeah.
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 Even a black hole, it's nothing.
Well,
How do you see it?
We'll talk. Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll talk about black hole. But
Even
yeah.
that's a similar thing. Like, obviously, a wormhole is just like a man-made version of it. But,
Yeah.
I guess there are other differences as well. But
Yeah, yeah.
a black hole, again, just being a 3-dimensional giant hole of vacuum.
Of which nothing escapes.
Yeah.
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 I also love the design of Miller's planet, the all-water planet.
Yeah, so yeah, let's talk about it. Cause
That's kind of the next thing anyway.
yeah, they
Yeah.
go through the wormhole, which is like visually so cool.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah. I
Anne
guess we should
Hathaway
talk about-
shakes what she thinks is an alien's hand.
Yes, very fun setup. But even the way we talked about it, how they sort of graze along the edge of it and just slightly like
Yeah, they don't just go directly perpendicular.
it's almost like they like get in orbit with it, and then they like just like slightly get into it, and then they go through the bulk is I think what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, very cool. And yeah, and then we get to the next galaxy with Miller's planet, which is their excuse to do time dilation.
Yeah.
Which
This was
is dope.
one of my favorite aspects of
Me too.
especially the first
So
time I watched the
intense.
movie.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good.
Where the premise is 1 hour on this. So this movie taught me that like the strength of gravity in a particular place determines.
Time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like actually a fully fledged real thing. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Straight up.
So even space travel aside, how we perceive time on Earth, for example, and how we perceive time on like Jupiter
Would be different.
some sort of time travel in that sense.
Yeah,
not,
I mean,
not
it
in
would
the sense
be-
of going backwards, but
There would be time dilation. Yeah, for sure. It wouldn't be as extreme as this movie, but like
Yeah, 'cause
Jupiter
the
doesn't
black
have enough.
holes-
It's and that's the thing that they do a good job of explaining is that it's because Miller's planet is so close to the black hole, and it's
so it's not
Yeah.
just the gravity from that planet, but from
Yeah.
the black hole next to it.
because like 1 hour to 7 years is like crazy time dilation.
Yeah.
Like you would need so much gravity to make that happen.
Because
Or I
that's the
did the
thing, even
calculation.
like if you just go into space, don't you experience very slight time dilation?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
but
Yeah,
like
it's
obviously
negligible.
nothing. Like you won't like come back to Earth and look like a baby, and everyone else will be
No.
old or whatever.
No, it's more like like if two people had synced up watches, like the
Yeah.
watches would be different, but
Couple
it's not
minutes
like
different or something.
you're not going to
Yeah.
be completely destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I even did the calculation of like the gravity there, like time passes like 60,000 something times faster than on Earth,
Jesus.
which is absolutely insane for the ratio of 1 hour on the planet to 7 years on Earth. So
Yeah. It's nuts.
Um,
This was something Kip Thorne I think talked about, just about like it's possible, but the like for humans to like be on there, like that amount of gravity would be like destroying
crush
your
you.
body.
Yeah.
Like they're like so that's a little bit even silly that they would even consider this a possibility when that amount of gravity would not be sustainable to live on.
Oh,
for
like why
humans.
would they even try that planet?
Yeah, because it's like, all right.
Well, I also like when they arrive on this completely water planet and they're like, yeah, this could work.
Yeah, they're like,
Yeah.
yeah, water. But to be fair, like they do assume Anne Hathaway's like, oh yeah, there's mountains over there. Like there is land. And
Oh,
it's not
yeah.
until after when they're like,
Those
aren't
aren't
mountains.
mountains.
They're
Yeah.
waves, which is so. It is like one of the most insane moments in this movie. But
But also, one thing I do have to say is the reason they thought it was viable is because it was still sending, like, an okay signal.
Yes.
But then, after they return, they realize it's because in that planet's time, she would have just landed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
And it's
I
like,
love.
couldn't they have thought about that before?
But see, like, yes, but that's also one of the things that I fucking love about this is, like, you think you're smart and you've thought of everything.
Yeah.
And I even love when she finally explains that, when Cooper's like, I don't understand, and Anne Hathaway finally has the realization of, like, she just landed. In this planet's time, she just landed and just started sending the signals. She probably only died minutes ago. And that's when Cooper's like, we are not prepared for this.
Yeah.
He's like, man, like, we really don't know as much as we think we know. And that's another fun, like, twist moment. Because it is, like, you don't really, like, it's like, yeah, this planet, the difference is 7 years. And you're like, oh, yeah, okay, great. And then it's like, oh,
Wait a minute.
wait a minute.
Yeah.
It's a good moment. And this also, it has one of my favorite, almost like Star Trek-esque moments of just, like, the team sitting in the room debating what to do, and when they flip the screen over so it becomes the whiteboard, and they just start drawing out, like, what if we do
infamous
this
drawing.
and we go like this and go from here and we just go up, like, I love that type of, like, space problem solving. It's so much fun.
Is that the scene where he's like, I can use the gravity of the black hole to slingshot us around safe?
Yes.
Yeah.
So dope.
Fuel, yeah.
So dope. And, like, yeah. I mean, that whole thing is it's awesome.
But also on Miller's planet, they lose one of the guys because
That guy's an
Hathaway
idiot.
doesn't want to
Yeah.
leave the data.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Although-
Wes Bentley's also in this movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've always hated why he dies. He's just like, he could
just-
have easily gotten into the ship, but he keeps staring at the tidal wave that's coming towards him.
Yeah. It is a little bit of a silly death on
Yeah.
his part. But,
And then that shot of his dead body. just
yeah,
floating.
when they leave the planet and he's just floating there dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up. I will say, though, this is probably a good excuse because we didn't talk about it during the cornfield chase, but we should probably talk about the music in a little bit in depth
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
because this is, like, one of the tracks in this movie that is just, like, insane. Like, Hans Zimmer just absolutely knocking it out of the park. And something I brought up to Dan, which I don't know if you have this as a fact, Carol, but in this track, there's, like, this constant, like, almost
Yeah.
metronome, like, thing, and each one of those ticks
Is
is
a
supposed to... Yeah, it's a year on Earth. Which is really cool when you watch this movie and you just realize, like, this is how fast time is passing. It's incredible.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so then that means there must have been 23 clicks because they were on that planet for 23 years, 4 months, and 8 days.
Yeah. Nuts.
And on that planet's time, that means they were there for just 3 hours and 17 minutes.
So, we have a question about this.
Yeah.
But I think I might have realized in something I said earlier. I was talking about, or you brought up the tidal wave.
Yeah.
And I've always had the problem of they see the waves, but then in the next shot, it's much closer than we see them in the horizon.
Yes.
I think that cut might have been like a passage of time.
Ah.
What I assumed is because they parked their ship and they were looking forward in one direction towards the signal, and that's where Anne Hathaway saw the mountains and this super distant faraway wave, and I think that was a wave going away, and then when Matthew McConaughey turned around they
Oh.
didn't realize that
Gotcha.
behind them there was
There's
a
another
gigantic
one.
wave forming, and that's the one that took them out and that they had to
Okay.
ride.
That makes sense. But then that also reintroduces the problem of where did those 3 hours go?
Yeah, this is a question, like, Dan and I were talking about, is, like, because it seems like we see their entire time there in real time. And we
Yeah.
had thought that after, like, the engines flood,
Yeah.
and him and Cooper and Anne Hathaway have this conversation about, like, time dilation and, like, when you're, you know, leaving your child, you can't tell them the world is ending because, like, you need to make sure that they feel okay. Like, whatever, it's a nice conversation between the two of them. But, like, we had always remembered there being a, like, cut that could have been a time passage cut.
Yeah. But then this
But
time
there isn't a cut. It's just sort of like they have the conversation, and then Tars immediately is like, "Oh
It's
my god,
ready.
there's another wave, and, like, we're ready to go." So, like, where are those 3 hours?
I don't know.
I guess it's just supposed to be like a movie thing of like just believe that the time you're viewing is a lot longer than what we're actually showing, but
I guess it also could be, like, maybe factoring in the amount of time it takes the lander to get from the ship to the planet and from the planet back to the ship. That could also
Yeah,
be.
because I think it's as soon as they enter the atmosphere of the planet that the
Yeah.
time dilation starts to affect. So
It is. That's why they had to leave the whole ship
Yeah,
outside, right?
True, and then the trip back.
Yeah,
is
so
that
there you
again.
go.
Yeah.
So that's probably, let's say, like, each of those takes an hour, and then maybe they're on the planet for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, whatever. So, like,
Okay.
that
I could believe that.
that makes
Sure.
sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was always something that kind of bugged me, where I was like, where's the time? But I guess the lander thing does kind of fix that. So, yeah, but yeah, just like Hans Zimmer, like, I mean,
I'm assuming you're talking about the track when the waves are approaching and he's like, get
Yeah.
off
Yeah.
the ship.
yeah, it's unbelievable. And I want to touch on, obviously, me being me, I love watching like behind the scenes stuff for movies. I'm really sad that, like, especially with streaming, that even stuff that comes to Blu-ray now generally doesn't have a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Like back in the day, like, I mean, we talked about this with Jurassic Park. Like there used to be like feature length documentaries about and I would pore over those for movies, dude. Like I love that shit. But yeah,
But now, like, when you see that, it's like, we're making this documentary about this legendary movie that was made, and it's just kind of released as its own feature film, where it should have been a companion piece to the
100%,
original movie.
100%. So this movie does have a little bit of stuff behind the scenes, which I appreciated, and some of it was like on Hans Zimmer. And I guess something Nolan did a little bit different with this movie that I think really pays off was he basically, like, he didn't give Hans Zimmer a script. He just sort of like outlined the emotion of scenes. And it's basically like, this is a movie about like a father and daughter and like having to leave home and yada yada. And like, in this scene, this is kind of what's going on. We need a piece of music for it. In this scene, this is what's going on. And then Hans Zimmer didn't score to the movie. He just wrote scores, and then Nolan cut the movie to the music, which traditionally you wouldn't do.
Yeah, that's kind of controversial.
Traditionally, you would cut the movie, and then the composer would score it, but they did it in reverse. And like, it is like weird and different, but my God, do I think it pays off in
It
this
works.
movie.
Like, I wouldn't have guessed that.
No, and it is so good. And like, I think that's why this probably is my favorite Hans Zimmer score, because it's not it is just like these emotional pieces of music that really do convey the emotions of what's going on in the scenes, as opposed to just sort of like scoring to what's actually happening, like literally happening.
Yeah,
I think
because
it
normally
works.
like they'd play you the film, and then you'd have the orchestra set up in front of the giant screen, and you would write the music for specific beats.
Yeah,
that's I learned in my editing classes that's generally like never edit to music.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't believe they actually made it work so well in this movie.
Yeah, I know, it works incredibly well. Which I guess shout out to the editor for this.
Yeah. Oh, big time.
But yeah, and shout out to Hans Zimmer for just making like wonderful pieces of music for this. Like, and you know, we talked about this a little bit after we watched it. This movie was criminally robbed at the Oscars in a lot of different categories, but like best score is for sure. Like, Grand Budapest, you know, mad respect to you, but come on, dude. I know. This not winning best score is maybe
being nominated for best picture.
Literally, I was looking into that too, and I saw that obviously they won like best effects,
visual effects.
So, yeah,
that was it.
Of course, they won
one.
that. I'm not arguing that, but yeah, no, that was insane. I can't believe it wasn't nominated for best picture, especially seeing what gets nominated for best picture these days. Like, are you fucking kidding me? But whatever.
I know. I mean, and listen, 2014 is a great year in movies, as we've talked about, but like, you're telling me you couldn't knock Boyhood off the it took 12 years to make.
That's the one gimmick of that movie, is that it took 12 years to make.
It took 12 years to make.
You shouldn't base a whole movie production about having it take 12 years to make.
I just think like this is so vastly superior. Like, how could this not be nominated for best picture? It's how did it not win best score? I mean, I don't know. It's so unfortunate. Like, I mean, we talked about it with all the critic stuff, but
in your unbiased opinions, if it was nominated for best picture, do you think it deserved to be beat out by Birdman still? Have you both seen Birdman?
Yeah. This really was a year for like fads.
Amazing.
Like amazing movies, but also like Boyhood took 12 years to make.
Yeah, because that
Birdman was all done in one shot.
One take one.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't actually.
Not actually. Yeah, there's hidden cuts, but I mean, listen, I think Birdman is I know why it won, because it's a movie about the arts. It's a movie about actors and artistic integrity. And it's a fun, like, have you seen it?
Yeah.
Carol, I know you've seen it, right?
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, me too. I think it's a good movie.
You got it for me, actually. I think this same year when I got you the Interstellar book, I think you got me Birdman on Blu-ray.
Oh yeah, you know what I did? I do remember that now. Yeah.
Because I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I like it a lot too.
I mean, I think this movie's a better movie though. Like, I don't know. Like, to me,
It's
like
tough.
I don't.
Because I think I like the performances in this movie, but I do think Birdman has the better performances.
I agree.
But at the same time, I haven't thought about Birdman until you mentioned it right now. And I think about Interstellar all the time.
Well, I've also just watched it more. I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I think, like, I should go back and watch Birdman again.
Want to watch Birdman today?
For real?
Sure, I have it. It's over there somewhere. Actually, I don't know what time it is. I probably have to go for dinner. But
Yeah.
we'll watch Birdman soon.
should.
No, like, here's what it comes down to for me, and I think part of the problem I have with, like, Best Picture a lot of the time is, like...
Oscar bait?
Oscar bait, but also, like, okay. I don't want to say that, like, a movie that's trying to do more, like, deserves to be credited more. Like, that's not necessarily fair to say, because that very much is, like, a participation thing of, like, well, you tried to do more, but even though you didn't succeed at it.
Here's a blue ribbon.
Yeah, here's a blue ribbon. But, like, the fact that Interstellar does try to do more and, like, pulls off as much as it does, to me, I always find it a little bit frustrating when it's a movie. It's like Birdman's a drama. It's like it's a pretty straightforward drama that, yes, has the cool, like, I understand, and I'm not trying to diminish, like, how difficult it would be to put that movie together in a way to where it looks like it was all done in one shot, and to have it still function well. Of course, that is an incredibly difficult thing to do. But the story of it is just a drama that is a good drama, and I get it, and it has good performances, and I get it. But it's, like, on the balance of things, I just feel like Interstellar is, like, trying to do significantly more and has stayed in the culture way longer, and, like, I don't know. Like, I think I would say, like, this deserves, like, if this won Best Picture, like, I think that's fair. Like, I understand Birdman winning Best Picture, but I think this,
I agree.
I think this deserves Best Picture.
I also prefer, like, if I had to watch one of those movies, I would obviously rewatch Interstellar.
Absolutely.
Before Birdman. What was I going to say, though? Yeah, like, I think everything that Interstellar tries works.
Yeah.
I do think just because of the subject matter of Interstellar, it would be a bit looser in relation to something like Birdman, which is just a straight up character drama.
Mm-hmm.
Only because of, like, just literally the subject matter you're dealing with. But I think given that, how tight the script for Interstellar ends up being is very impressive. And again, I would have loved to see this win Best Picture.
Yeah, me too.
Let alone be nominated.
Yeah.
Anyway, that sidebar over. Let's continue.
Yeah, for sure. Would you like to bring up the egghead?
Oh yeah. So, stemming from last week's episode on The Princess Bride, believe it or not, Cooper actually uses the term egghead in this movie, which
it made me so
I've
happy.
never realized before 2 days ago when we watched it. Probably because I wasn't looking out for a word like egghead since recording that last episode.
Yeah.
You're
Just wanted
welcome
to
for
mention
making
that.
it front of mind again.
Yeah, thank you.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you for making me prioritize that word in any line of dialogue.
It's a great word.
Should I be
Yeah,
editing more eggs onto our visuals, or?
The running theme of the podcast is just there's always an egg
Find the
somewhere.
egg.
Yeah, find the egg.
Like, where's Waldo?
The literal Easter eggs.
Oh
my God.
Well, for the Midnight Mass episode, we have to put a bunch of eggs on it then, because that's our Easter episode.
Oh my god, so festive.
Fuck, I still gotta watch that.
Easter egg heads. You
Um,
have time.
Yeah, there's time.
All
Okay.
right. We can move on now. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, they leave Miller's planet. They come back, and poor Romley, who
Yeah.
just gets the shit end of the stick in this
literally.
movie.
Yeah, we haven't even mentioned him yet. Romley.
Romley, the I guess, like, pure physicist of the group, who's, like, super into the black hole and, like, the physics side of it, who doesn't really like travel.
He's not the field guy.
No, and there is that wonderful scene where he's kind of freaking out about being on the spaceship.
Yeah.
And Matthew McConaughey gives him, like, the MP3 with just, like, nature sounds on it,
Yeah.
which I think is kind of, like, a cool, touching scene. Yeah, it's been 23 years.
I remember first seeing that plot twist. It was like, holy fucking shit.
It's so good. It's so good, man.
Well, maybe
One
that's
missed-
why they don't want it to feel like we've been on Miller's planet for 3 hours.
For the reveal of it.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
you were even saying, of like you wish they hadn't specified going in what the time dilation effect was, so that when you come back and realize it's been 23 years, like, whoa.
That's the thing. Like,
specifying it before gives you the stakes.
Yes.
It does, but because they specifically say the 1 hour 7 years
That's what
thing,
I mean. Like, if they just hadn't specified the numbers, or
like,
I guess what you mean.
Or if they had said, like we don't know, it could be anywhere between this and this, but we don't actually know. But then if they did do that, we would all be like, how do you not know? You're fucking physicists. It's a very easy. I could do the calculation right now with the formula. So like, you should be able to calculate that. So
true.
So it's kind of sort of like, you're kind of fucked either way. But yeah.
One missed opportunity, I think, about this scene when they come back and find out that he's been there for 23 years. I think it would have been cool to have that be a character turning point for his character, because we don't really get a lot out of him for the rest of the movie. He just kind of dies and then like
he just exists to be shit on, basically.
I think it would have been cool if he became a lot more cynical about the mission after this.
Yeah.
And maybe he could have even like taken care of some of what Dr. Mann does like, how do I put this? Like, he could become not an antagonist, but his ideological views could have sort of been, they could have replaced some of what we get from Dr. Mann later in the movie, just about, because Dr. Mann ends up being regretful about the mission himself.
Yeah.
And I think that could have been even just like kind of foreshadowed a little bit in a turning point in Romley's character coming back after being like seemingly abandoned, he would probably feel like for 23 years. Just kind of an idea that I thought that it would have been fun to explore, but
for sure. Or even I feel like in the scene, which we'll come to shortly, where they decide to go to Dr. Mann's planet, I feel like he could have maybe been a bit more aggressive towards like siding with Cooper and not Dr. Brand in a way. Do you know what I mean? Of almost like, hey, Dr. Brand, you fucking got us into this mess. I've been on this planet for I was on the spaceship for 23 goddamn years because of your goddamn intuition about like, well, she's sending out a beacon and there's organics and that's good. And he could have sort of like, I think, sided with Cooper a bit harder in that scene.
Yeah, or even just in general, I kind of wish he was a bit more angry.
He was a bit more of a dick.
Yeah,
for sure.
But
for
even
sure.
in the
Just
same way,
towards
like, their plan was to go to all 3 planets. It was only because of this tidal wave fuck up that they weren't able to, so it wasn't really like her decision to go.
No, that wasn't her decision. I think what he means is like when she got caught under the the whole wreckage. That's why they took so much time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was her fault.
So to be like, goddamn you, Dr. Brand. Yeah. But she gets shit on enough, which we'll get to. So like, I understand. Like, there's only so much that character can take. So we'll get there. But yeah, I mean, this leads to what is still, I mean, it's not one of my 2 favorite scenes in the entire movie, which is like the
reveal,
the watching of his children having grown up over fucking FaceTime messages, which is like,
oh, this is great.
Like, it is still so incredibly hard to watch. And, like, so sad. Even though, like, with almost 10 years of this movie having existed and, like, knowing exactly what's going to happen. Like, it's messed up.
And this is where we get the cool transition back to what's happening on Earth.
Yes.
Because, so Cooper watches all the Tom messages, then the one Murphy... or Murph message comes up, and it's like, oh, I'm the same age as you when you left now. You should probably come back. And it's super sad. And then she clicks it off. And now it's like we're being caught up with...
And that's the cut to, like, present-day Earth, and which is really cool.
When we have the cut back to the ship, it's when she delivers the next message. Yeah. So, like, that's the connection between the characters, and it's also the cutting connection between the scenarios.
It's really clever.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really clever. And, yeah, I mean, just that scene, like... God, that would be so fucked. Like, to have to do that.
To watch your kids grow up in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Well, that would also, like, you find out that the grandfather died, your kid met someone, is married, had a child, child died. Like, oh my goodness.
It's so
like,
much
information
to process.
overload, yeah.
Yeah, and then, like, your kid is angry at you. Because, like, Tom's last message is just him being like, I can't do this anymore. I wish you would come back.
Yeah.
And then Murph shows up, and Murph is like...
I wish you would come
back. And, like, this also, I mean, this is the scene that really cements this as being, like, my favorite Matthew McConaughey performance, because it is, like, completely dialogueless on his part. And it's one of those things, you know, I know a lot of times when people talk about movies, like, a lot of the performances that get recognized are the very big performances.
It's the angry performances.
It's Joaquin as Joker. It's like I lost a lot of weight and I'm like crazy. Like those are the but like what I think is
or it's like Jake Gyllenhaal freaking out at someone that's like losing his temper.
Yeah. It's the big like what's so good about this performance is that he literally has to convey so many different emotions.
Yeah. Well, it's a spectrum, right? He starts out like so happy that his kid found a girl and like fell in love and then had a baby, and then it gets darker and darker.
Yeah, and it's also
crying.
like even within that, it's like I'm so happy for you. Fuck, I can't believe I'm missing this.
Yeah.
And then fuck, I can't believe I fucked up as a father.
I shouldn't have missed this.
It's so like layered and just constantly going back and forth of like sad, happy, oh my god, happy, sad. Like it's constantly flip-flopping, and he does the whole thing dialogueless. Like it is all just on his face with like a slow push in on him while you hear the context. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, this is like if he was nominated for an Oscar, which he probably should have been, like
they would have shown
this was the clip. This was the clip.
He
and
also
it was
wasn't nominated?
No, he wasn't.
No, I don't think any actors were nominated.
Ridiculous.
It's insane. This is like a phenomenal performance. Phenomenal. But again, this is not the performance they would nominate because no one was yelling, and no one lost a lot of weight or gained a lot of weight. And
the Christian Bale method.
Yeah, or like, and obviously like like all jokes aside, like Jake Gyllenhaal, Christian Bale.
Yeah,
Joaquin,
they're good actors.
Those are all like great actors. Like those are all good performances too. Like I understand why Joaquin won for Joker. It's not that it's a bad performance, but it's just like this is such a layered and complex performance to not even be nominated is kind of fucked up.
There's absolutely an argument to be made that it's obviously just as hard to do the subtle performance to make you look like a real human being and not a movie character.
Absolutely.
Rather than just, having your emotions be as overt as a more over the top performance.
Absolutely. And and so like to your point, like this is the year of Nightcrawler where Jake Gyllenhaal
that's
gets
another
nominated.
one.
And so it's like
there you go, exactly.
So he's nominated for that, and he is crazy and yells a lot. And like it's a great performance, but like it's this deserves a spot on that list of I think nominated performances. So it's sad that it wasn't because this is an incredible scene.
Yeah, this movie got robbed.
This movie got fucked at the Oscars, like really bad.
Do we know how much profit it made?
I don't know.
A few hundred of millions of dollars, because their box office was like 700 million worldwide at one point, and I think they came slightly under budget, like in the making of it, even though the budget was still ridiculous. So like a few $100 million. And Christopher Nolan got paid $20 million plus 20% of the box office. So he got fucking rich off this.
Yeah,
movie.
well, but I mean,
20% of the box office.
Once you're that big of a director, I mean, once you're Christopher Nolan and you made The Dark Knight for Warner Brothers, I think you can be like, give me whatever I want. So
and also I'm gonna make whatever I want.
And also, fuck you, I'm gonna make whatever. And if you're Warner Brothers, you're probably like, yeah, you've made our most successful movie of all time. So like, why would we not listen to you?
The DCU that they tried to do afterwards
failed.
Was nothing close to that. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Remember when he produced Man of Steel?
That is and he's listed as a producer on Batman vs Superman, but like, of course he did nothing. Like that was so clearly like, we're just gonna give you some money to put your name on this. Is that okay? And he was like, all right.
Because he was producer on Man of Steel, he learned that you can just plant a bunch of corn for really cheap if you need a cornfield in a movie. So for this film, they actually planted like hundreds of hectares of corn and actually like burned it. And like whatever they didn't burn, they sold for profit after the movie wrapped.
Classic Nolan.
Oh yeah, because Man of Steel was before this.
Yeah,
they planted 500 acres of corn to be destroyed.
Wow. Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of corn in this movie.
There's a lot of corn in this movie.
This movie's very pro-corn. Yeah. So Murph is now Jessica Chastain, which is a great casting, phenomenal casting. I feel
What is it with Jessica Chastain playing adult versions of?
Yeah, because the same thing happens in It Chapter 2. Yeah.
And I mean, literally just those two movies. So I don't know why.
It's like that TikTok audio of like, if I had a nickel every time that happened, I'd have 2 nickels. But still, it's weird that it happened twice. Like that's literally this of like, she's really great in this. Yeah, I think, and I love this whole thing of seeing her work with Dr. Brandon. Dr. Brandon being a physicist and trying to help him solve the equation, but then she realizes he's actually a piece of shit that solved the equation. Yeah.
And she's the complete opposite of Tom.
Yeah, she is. I do like that. Again, great casting. Casey Affleck.
Also,
'cause
introduction
he's a
of
piece
Topher
shit.
Grace.
Yeah.
I forgot
Yeah,
he was in
He's
there.
just kind. He's just kind of there in this movie.
Has Topher Grace ever not been Eric from That 70s Show? Like, he just always, I feel like, is that guy a little bit of, like, I don't know.
I will say
I
in
like
the
him.
episode of Black Mirror he was in, he
Yeah.
was not at all that.
Fair. That's fair. I think that's probably my favorite performance of his outside of That 70s Show. Because, like, it is just something totally different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
I think.
can we talk about the dust?
Oh yeah, sure.
Is
I was
that-
just gonna say I think Eric Foreman played Topher Grace in That 70s Show and not the other way around.
Yeah, sure.
He's
Sure.
been Eric Foreman ever since.
For sure.
Yeah, the dust.
Yeah, so they go to Tom's house. Or at least Jessica Chastain the first time goes to, like, her old house, which is now Tom's house, which was the family home.
The farm.
The farm, which he takes care of. And, you know, we get some more context about, like, this person's farm is dead and we're going to replant it next year and we'll see what happens. And she's just kind of like, oof, like, this is not good. They all have, like, coughs. And this is where we get introduced to the worst character in the movie, which is Tom's son, Coop. No, Coop is
Yeah.
the one that died, right?
No,
No,
that
Coop
was
is the other one.
What was
This
the
is, like,
name of the
maybe
one
next
that
time.
died? Do we know? Jesse?
Jesse, yeah.
Yeah.
The baby that died.
Poor Jesse. Anyway, yeah. So Coop, who only has like 3 scenes in the movie, and in each one, the editing around it is so funny for some reason. Like each one is a meme, and this is the favorite one that's become a meme among like our friend group, which is he has this like cough, this off-screen cough, and then it cuts to him mid-sentence, and all he says is the dust. But he says it so fast. Like, you have to watch the scene back here, Alex. Because, like...
You're going to insert it,
Oh,
right?
I'm going to insert it right here. Because he's coughing, and then he goes, the dust. Like, he literally just says that, and then he just walks out of the scene, and it cuts to him, like, as he's saying it. It's so awkward. It's so
like
funny. Like,
the first, like, at the very first syllable of the is when the cut is.
yeah.
Like, there's no space in between the start of a sentence and the cut.
Were they really trying to trim down the runtime or something? And they're like, this is,
Maybe
this
it
is
was
a
because
place
what
we
you're saying
can
about editing to
sacrifice.
the music. Maybe it had to be that way.
But I don't think there was music in this scene.
The dust.
I don't remember.
Well,
You might be right.
When I insert it, we'll see. But yeah, it's very funny. It's a very funny cut. Like, not intentionally, but it is like, yeah.
Poor
Anyway,
guy.
the dust. The little dust boy. But,
Little dust.
the little dust boy. But that does serve a greater purpose, which is that they're all dying. Because
From
they can't
dust.
breathe
Yeah.
anymore on Earth.
Yeah, remember the mask up scene?
Oh, that was
We didn't
fucked.
talk about
Yeah.
that.
There is that scene, yeah, with the dust storm where they all put on their N95 masks or whatever, and we were all like, Dan and I were like, don't like that, don't like that.
Foreshadowing.
Foreshadowing.
Well, at least we all have them now for the future dust storms.
Yeah, true. We're all prepared.
Keep your masks.
Yeah. Save them. They're going to come in handy. Yeah, but yeah, we set that up. And, you know, Topher Grace comes to listen to their lungs and be like, they're all dying.
Yeah, so is he like a doctor or something?
Yes.
I think he's a doctor, yeah.
But I think, like,
And that-
specifically a doctor that works for NASA.
Yeah.
He was working
'Cause
in
he's
the
also
hospital
at
where they
NASA,
sent,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
And at
but he's
NASA
the
headquarters when she
doctor-
solves the problem.
Yeah.
He's the doctor of Michael Caine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the implication.
Okay.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
We were also kind of joking about, like, why does this NASA headquarters have its own private hospital? But
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, whatever. Who cares?
I feel like it was retrofitted because Dr. Brand wouldn't stop working there and also living there. So they're like, we need to bring the hospital to him.
That's sort of what I thought too. Is sort of like
Can you
all
imagine
those
being
people
so
there.
important that someone builds a hospital for you?
Yeah, but then it turns out all of his work is just a bunch of bullshit anyway.
What a goddamn waste.
Um,
Yeah, but that sort of sets up like what's going on Earth. The tension of Earth is like we are at like our wits' end. Like people are now dying. Nobody is going to live on Earth, and Jessica Chastain is like trying to figure it out, but also like Tom, her brother's a piece of shit who punches Topher Grace in the face and is like, just let us die here. Basically, is what he's saying. I mean, he's like. Not to be crude about it, but he is basically like just an anti-masker. You know what I mean? Like where he's just sort of like, nope, it's fine. We've always done this. We'll be okay. And it's like, okay,
Well, it's all he's ever known.
Yeah.
Which is probably
Yeah.
why his dad didn't love him.
True.
Where's that truck? How's the
How's
truck?
that truck? Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think after this is when we... Oh, okay, so then we find out the plot twist that we've been talking about, where
Yeah.
we find out it's all a sham. Dr. Brand never intended for the equation of gravity to be solved. And then she records her message asking if her father knew and abandoned her to die,
Yeah.
which is so
sad. Yeah.
And I like that she doesn't officially find out that wasn't the case until they meet again when she's an old woman. But yeah, then this is where we get the transition back to Cooper.
Yes.
And back into space.
And this is where we also get, like, a scene
Matt
that I
Damon.
think we both don't like. Not the Matt Damon stuff. Before, when they're trying to decide what planet to go to.
Oh, yeah.
And we kind of alluded to this. Carol, like, I'd like to get your thoughts on this as well. But, Anne Hathaway obviously is, like, a very good actress and is, like, good in this movie. It's just unfortunate that there's, like, one female character in this movie and she gets the entire monologue about how love is going to save us all. And also that it's a very not poorly written, but sort of, like, silly. Because it is, like...
It's cheesy.
Maybe love is the one thing that can transcend time and space just like gravity. And I'm kind of like... You had said, and you're right, Dan, like... At the end of this movie, when that comes back... Like, it is love, but really what they're talking about is, like, having that emotional connection to someone. And so this entire monologue is so much better if you just swap out the word love with just, like emotion. Like, to have an emotional connection with someone is what gives you the ability to then do the thing that you do at the end of the movie. But as it stands, I do think it is a little cheesy and silly.
Yeah.
And it also, like... I don't know. Like, it does not make her case well at all. I feel like after that monologue, the guys are like, okay, so we're definitely not going to Edmund's planet then. That was terrible.
Yeah, because just, like, the sentence would have been, like, the only thing that can transcend dimensions besides gravity is emotion.
Yeah.
That sounds a lot better, I think.
Sounds a lot better than love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because love is an emotion. That includes love, but it also means, like, anger, happiness, whatever you want.
Whatever you want. Yep.
I will say when I watched it, I didn't find it cheesy, but I was a little frustrated when they were setting up that the one female astronaut is in love with one of the people on one of the planets, and then, like...
Yeah.
When they first set it up, it's, like, before they go into sleep, when they're just traveling to the wormhole in general. And so then when you find out that they have to make a choice, I was like, that's when this is coming back. When I watched it for the first time, obviously, now I knew that. But yeah, I was really frustrated that now it had to be like, oh, this woman is, like, now thinking with her heart instead of her head, even though she's this brilliant scientist.
Yeah,
and logically,
it's really silly.
you need to go to the planet that is still actively relaying you thumbs ups, like, signals, even though they're all fake, because
10 out of 10
Dr.
would
Man is
recommend.
rude. Yeah.
He's rude. Yeah, that's a very, very nice way of putting it, Carol.
Listen, I have COVID. My brain isn't at 100%.
Yeah,
I'm
fair.
just trying to put sentences together that make any sense and convey what I'm trying to say.
That is fair.
But yeah, so that was a little frustrating just as a plot point to have that as part of it. Obviously, it was, like, I guess, to, like, add extra drama and conflict. I don't know. But obviously they didn't go with her idea, even though in the end it was the right one all along. So maybe love does win.
Well, it's not that what she was saying was wrong. I just wish it was worded better.
Yeah.
I'm fine with the idea. I like that idea for, like, this is such a scientifically accurate movie, and, like, you're presented with so much science. And then in the midst of all that, we were reminded, like, no, this is what we need to also think about, this aspect of humanity, like our emotion and our ties to other human beings. I like that
That's
we're
really
reminded
the whole
about that.
reason they're doing this anyway, is
Yeah.
because they care about human beings.
Exactly. So it's important that they throw that in there
Yeah.
to remind us of what this is all about, like why we're even doing this to begin with. I just wish it was written a little bit better.
Absolutely. And also, I mean, that is sort of, like, always my favorite type of science fiction, is, like, using crazy scientific concepts just to create a context for which to explore, like, human problems and thoughts and stuff. So yeah, like, I'm totally down for that. But yeah, it's just kind of silly. And also, like, it also just is weird to me that it's, like, and now she's going to monologue about this, as opposed to, like, let's have, and I talked about this before, about, I can't believe I'm about to bring this up, but on the Mother episode of, like,
You say that every time you're about to bring up the Mother episode.
I know,
you're like,
I'm sorry.
I can't believe I'm about to bring this up.
But I talked about it, like, the idea that...
Sorry to cut you off. That has been the most useful episode.
It really
we've ever
has.
recorded.
Yeah, it really has. But the idea of just, like, setting up one person to be so clearly wrong and then being like, you're wrong. Or even, I guess in this case, she is proven right by the end. But you know what I mean? Like, in that moment, she's supposed to be, like, completely wrong. But, like, why couldn't this have been just a dialogue scene between them? Especially because Cooper himself is also dealing with that. And, like, to have them actually go back and forth and have a conversation and not have it just be this woman character that's in love with a guy, and have it be like, no, like, we're all dealing with our emotional ties and connections. Or even for Cooper to call her out and be like, well, you're such a big proponent of plan B. Like, you keep talking about how you would be totally fine doing plan B, like, but you're okay with, like, letting your emotions make this decision, but for me to want to get the people off Earth where I'm using my emotions, like, that's wrong. Why is that wrong versus what you're doing is right? Like, there is a legitimate, good, dramatic moment to have here between these characters. There is a moment, like, there is. But instead, yeah, she just very sillily, like, monologues about it, and then it ends.
Yeah.
And then she's, like, bitter about it. She's like, well, like, if this doesn't go right, and then we have to make a choice between going to Edmund's planet or going back home. So I hope you'll be just as fucking objective about it then. And I'm like, that's shitty. Like, come on. Like, is this really where we're going with this? And now she's all, like, pissy
But also,
because
he
of that.
was that objective about it in the end.
I know.
So he's a scientist through and through. Is what he
know.
just proved.
I like how in the scene Romley's just standing there.
Well, then that was kind of my point. Is like, I'm like,
They should've
Romley,
just had a
like,
conversation.
say something, like, get involved, and this
He's
would be a great
tired
moment
at this point.
Yeah,
He's
like,
just along for the
Bro,
ride.
I've been here for 23 years. Like,
I forget how to talk to people. No, but, like, this could have also brought in his perspective of, like, what he's been dealing with.
Yeah.
And, like, it's such a scene that could have been expanded upon, and it feels like the first draft of that scene of just, like, I'm just gonna say everything, and then we're gonna go, nope. Like, okay. I don't know. You could have had a few more drafts of that scene, but what are you gonna do? It is what it is.
But then we
Also,
go
I
to
think-
Man's planet, or unless we still want to talk about this.
well, I was just gonna say this happens. I think this actually happens before they sit down to watch the messages, right? Because this definitely happens before we flash back to Murph.
It
Because-
happens in between. I think there's a cut in between somewhere.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say when Murph records that other message and we cut back to them again, they're
already going
on their
to-
way to
Yeah.
Man's planet. Yeah.
There is definitely a cut somewhere in the middle. I just don't remember where. Because when he
Okay.
gets back, when they get back and Romley's old, like, I remember, like, the music cue kicks in for when Cooper is about to go watch the messages. Like, that's all
Oh.
sort of one long sequence. So this happens after that, but I just don't know how they handle the cut in between. But
Okay.
regardless, I still like using the messages as a cutting point. Actually, it might... I think old Dr. Brand sends a message to Amelia, and that's how we cut back to the ship.
Oh.
Because there's, like, another message where he's
Oh,
like...
you're right.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that's what
that-
it is. I think that's what it is. So, still keeping that theme going.
And
Yeah,
then-
because Murph, like, starts to confront him about, like, lying about the equation, and he's like, I just want to send a message to my daughter. Leave me alone.
Yes.
Yes,
And then the
yes.
second time we cut back to them is when he's on this deathbed.
Yeah.
And you can't understand what he's saying.
Yeah, thank God for subtitles. That's a rough scene.
But also, what a dick move for her to be like, he's about to die, and she's like, did my dad know? And he doesn't answer. He just starts to quote his dumb little poem. And it's like,
Yeah.
tell her that her dad cared about her. Like, what the fuck?
I know. Yeah, it's pretty fucked up. But he's an asshole.
Speaking of
Anyway,
assholes.
Speaking of assholes,
Can we
yeah.
finally talk about Matt Damon?
Okay, so I love the world building of Dr. Man's planet when they're flying down and they hit the cloud and it turns into, like, ice.
That's cute.
That's also
That's cool.
another thing that would never happen scientifically
course.
that
Yeah.
Dr. Kip allowed them to keep in for the aesthetic.
Yeah.
Dr. Kid.
Dr. Kip. It's a fun name.
It would be Dr. Thorne. That's why I'm laughing.
That's
Dr.
okay.
Interesting doctor,
Dr.
but his
Kip
first name.
Thorne.
Dr. Kip Thorne. Yeah, I mean, Dan, you and I pointed that out too, of like, okay, if the cloud's dense enough to...
It would just fall.
It would just fall
But
down.
it's cool. I like that it's there.
But yeah, it's still fun. Yeah, it's still cool. Also, I believe the like where they actually filmed Dr. Man's planet stuff is also where they filmed this stuff in Batman Begins, which we talked about.
Iceland.
So that's cool. Yeah, Christopher Nolan being like, I like ice and stuff. Cool.
But Iceland isn't that more green than Greenland, and Greenland's more icy?
Yeah, I've always heard that too, but there definitely are still like glaciers and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere there. Yeah, but
Anyway, it looks great.
surprise Matt Damon.
Yep. So he's there.
Dr. Man. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what are we going to say? Everyone knows he's an asshole. But I like how they handle it, because he very clearly is, like, not okay, because he's been there for so long, and he just has that, like, whole, like, isolation, like, driving you crazy type thing.
Yeah.
Cabin fever.
Cabin fever, yeah. Which, yeah, I like. It's cool. It's fun.
Can we talk about the fight scene now?
Yes.
The worst scene in the whole movie.
But before
most
we
awkward.
get there, we can discuss it. But I just want to say, because his whole thing is obviously he's falsifying the reports about like what's
Yeah.
on the planet and saying that there's like a surface that has organics and that he had to dismantle his robot because he incorrectly said it was actually crystals of whatever. But how did he falsify the reports? Because like, aren't the reports printed out of some software that's like doing the reading? Did he like write them with pen and paper? Like, I just don't understand.
Well, they
How?
say that the data that each of them can send back was just like very rudimentary,
Okay.
like binary data. So I think they would still have to manually input that.
Okay.
So it's more like, yeah, like the reports probably came through and said like this planet's fucked.
Yeah.
And then
It's like, we're just gonna
and he just
ignore
didn't send that, and he just like coded bullshit binary data to send to them.
Okay.
I think is the implication.
Or even a report was probably just a write-up,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
like a lab report style.
So,
Oh god.
thesis, hypothesis,
Abstract.
methodology. Oh my god.
Name and date.
Yeah.
I can't forget
Yeah,
the name and date.
Yeah.
Can we talk about this fight scene now?
But then they
Yes,
fight.
we-
Yeah.
It's so uncomfortable. It's so funny.
It's so awkward.
I mean, just in general, their like conversation as they're going down to this like
Well-
quote unquote surface is also just so awkward. Like, I understand Matt Damon hasn't talked to people in a while, but it's so bizarre.
Yeah, Dan and I talked a lot about, like, as you know, Carol, we really love quotes that aren't quotes.
Yeah.
So just like lines of dialogue that we remember that nobody else does. And I feel like a lot of Dr. Man's lines in this are that for me because of how weird they're delivered.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I know it's on purpose, but it doesn't make it less funny.
Yeah.
It's still funny. But yeah, like, one thing I will say about the fight that I like is I appreciate them introducing the air blasters because that comes back in the Tesseract. Like, that's how Cooper kind of flies around in the
Yeah.
Tesseract, which is a nice little, like, introduction to it, but also feels like a very real-world thing of, like, if you were exploring a planet and, you would build something like that onto your spacesuit. So it's cool. But yeah, there's that one shot where, like, the music just goes out and they're just kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
and as
Yeah,
it's, like,
just
pulling
pulling
away from
silent.
them. It's so funny. It's so silly. Like,
Especially because it's a wide shot.
Yeah,
Like, look
it's-
at these two idiots. Just,
but I think also, like, and not to read too deeply into it, like, I think that's why they chose to cut to a wide shot there is
yeah, because
harkening
the
back to what Amelia said.
emotion.
Like, yeah, like, you're not gonna face evil out there. Like, only, like, humanity is evil. Nature isn't evil. And so you get this beautiful shot of nature with these two fucking idiot men fighting, which I think is, like, the point.
While the future of the human race is at stake. back
Yeah,
then.
like, we're literally talking about saving humanity, and it's just two guys in a fist fight. Like, yeah.
But yeah, I love when when so he initially kicks Cooper down the hill,
Yeah.
and then Cooper's like finding out that he faked his stuff. He's like, "You fucking coward!" And then Dr. Man's like, "Yes, yes,
Yes.
yes." Like 4 times,
He literally says it 4 times. It's
Um,
so uncomfortable.
and it like holds the shot on him. It's
Yeah.
really comedic. And then the headbutt that he does, I love.
Oh my god. I mean, we talked about, like, that part of the fight when he's on top of him. He's like, stop it. Like, that is the most Toy Story.
Yeah.
Like Buzz and Woody in the gas station in Toy
Yeah.
Story 1. Yeah, and he's just, because there's a beat where nothing happens. He's like, stop it. And they just stop, and then he goes, thump, and he hits him. He's like, hey, and then he just keeps hitting him. Like,
It was like
so
when
funny.
Woody is punching Buzz and he traps his hand under the helmet.
That's exactly what it is. It's like the same scene. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah.
And then, but 50-50 odds are the best odds he's had in years.
I did like that line.
yeah.
I love that line. Yeah, he's like, "Are you kidding me? Best odds I've had in years." I was like, "Oh shit." Yeah.
How long do you think he's been on there? Alone.
I don't remember if they say or not. I don't know.
I
Anyway,
saw
I was
on
just curious.
Wikipedia
Many years.
someone was trying to like do a timeline, and I don't know if this was proven
That would be
accurate
hard.
or not. So just take it with a grain of salt. But
Well-
they were assuming that for some reason the year of Murph's birth was the year that those missions went out. I don't know why. I don't know if it was mentioned at some point somewhere.
I don't
But
think so.
if we assume that to be true, I guess like 30 something, 40. How old was she at the time? Years.
Yeah, because that's the thing is like
But then
because of the
But then
time
I don't know
dilation.
I don't know what his planet's time dilation is.
I think his is supposed to be at least like pretty close to Earth's.
I think they said it was something like 60-hour days and nights. I wrote
Okay.
it down somewhere, but 67-hour long days. I just happened to be on the right page of my notes.
Nice.
Okay.
But the thing is, like, the day length wouldn't really matter because you're still near the black hole, right? That's the reason. For the
yeah,
dilation.
like the day length is more like I guess the planet's cycle, but it's
Yeah.
more like how would that day length relate to, like, is it what like the hour to hour
Yeah.
comparison?
or just what's the progression of time?
Yeah, I don't know. Regardless, he's been there a long time. Like, yeah, you got to think at least 30 to 40 years because like the. So let's assume that he is on Earth's clock with the time dilation. There was already 23 years plus however long the missions initially went out, and like if there is more time dilation, like, yeah, I don't know.
But he can also cryo sleep.
True. Well, he says that he's like, yeah, I cryo sleep, and then he's like, at one point, I didn't set it to wake up.
Oh, yeah, that's
so
right.
like, yeah, for sure.
Just wanted to. I was curious. I want to see what you guys thought about that.
Yeah, it's got to be a long ass time, for sure.
So anyway, then he fucking explodes Romley.
Yeah, poor Romley
Oh.
just gets fucked.
Poor guy.
And he hijacks the ship to try and go steal the Endurance
Yeah.
and abandon them there
Yes,
and go home.
I do like my favorite part of this whole section is when Cooper's actually like he can't breathe, like his mask is destroyed, and Man's walking away, and he's basically taunting him, where he's like,
Yeah.
"You see your children's faces right now, like whatever." And then he starts saying the poem because every fucking evil person in this movie says that poem, and just like the tension that builds there with
What if Tom started saying?
yeah, I think Tom would. With then like young Amelia Brand like trying to race back to get to him before he dies, and the tension with Romley, and then we're also at this point cutting back to Jessica Chastain.
Yeah. Oh, I like that.
And and the whole time in between all this cutting, this is the first time we hear "No Time for Caution," which is like my favorite song from the movie. But like, it's just awesome. It's such a tense overall scene, and you're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
like shit is going down.
Yeah. Is No Time for Caution? I thought that was the one where with the docking sequence.
They play it. They
Yeah.
play it in both.
Oh,
spots.
it's reused?
Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't realize that either, but they definitely play it in
Cool.
both spots, which is cool because in both times there was no time for caution.
Yeah.
because both ones they could have died in. So yeah,
That scene is awesome.
yeah. But yeah, so he goes to hijack the ship, and he gets an imperfect lock, and he tells the computer to override.
Opens it anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Didn't
the best part
he
is
study this shit? Doesn't he know it's gonna blow up?
Well,
he's
out of his
lost
mind.
his mind. He's
Yeah.
lost his mind. Yeah, but yeah, he's like imperfect lock, override. We can't do
Override.
that. Override, like he just, and then there's the other time when he says override again, a third
Yeah.
time for some reason. Like he's such a jackass, which all then leads to, like, for what some reason is a Christopher Nolan trope, which is someone getting blowed up in the middle of a sentence, because it happens to Maggie Gyllenhaal in The Dark Knight as well, where she's like, Harvey, listen,
Oh yeah.
what I was gonna, and then she blows up, and like, and this is the same thing when he's like, there is a moment, and then he gets blowed up, which is
Also,
fun.
we're saying again, it happens all the time, being 2 times.
2 times, but it's weird. It's weird that it's like the same
Yeah.
thing that happens both times. Yeah, but then that leads to like my personal favorite scene in
The docking sequence.
the whole movie, and maybe my favorite scene in all of cinema. Like it's so hype. This docking sequence.
They have to spin so fast.
I know.
I also remember because I think I think recently in our physics class we were learning about
Relative velocity.
relativity and like centripetal force.
Yeah.
So like seeing that play out in the movie was so cool.
It's so
how
cool.
it lined up with our class.
It's so cool. I mean, I love it, and I love like even just like from the beginning of the scene where it's like the spaceship explodes and like it starts spinning and like
and it looks great.
Oh yeah, okay. We should just say like we haven't even touched upon too much of the space, like how amazing it all looks. It all looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Like there's the scene I pointed out to you, Dan, where when they first get to the wormhole and it's like you get the shot of Saturn with the spaceship going past Saturn and it's just the very tiny blinking light of the spaceship.
It's like 1 pixel.
It's so like just to like get across the scale of space. It's like it's beautiful, and this whole sequence is no different. It's gorgeous, but like,
but I especially like just I guess the radial symmetry of the ship because the explosion makes it spin.
Yes,
it just looks so.
It is visually pleasing.
Well, because also the Endurance is supposed to mimic like a clock because it has 12 arms.
Oh,
and one of them's blown out. Oh my god,
that is such a cool metaphor.
That's cool.
God, this movie's so good, dude. Like, how do people not like this movie? God, fuck you. Okay, so anyway, like if you're listening to this 2.5 hours in and you still are like hate listening to this, like. Just go. Like, you don't really have to. This movie's great. So, yeah, don't stay.
Just G-O.
Yeah. Yeah, go. Okay, but something I love is the very first thing he does, like, it explodes, he stops for a second, he sees it, and then he, like, flips a switch on the lander, and it starts, like, vibrating, which is a callback to earlier in the movie when he's going to land on Miller's planet, and it's vibrating, and Tars is like, do you want me to shut that off? And he's like, no, I need to feel it. Because, like, he's a pilot, and that is a very, like, pilot thing to say of like I need to feel the ship, like, and I know
I need to be one with my ship.
I know it's cheesy, but it just, again, going back to like doing stuff without having to say it, just that like visual callback of that happening immediately sets the tone for the scene of like what the shit is he gonna do? And then again you get the hype moment of like, what are you doing? And he just says docking, and then that's when like the music goes into full like Hans Zimmer effect. Awesome.
Like the chorus comes on,
yeah. As if it's like Duel of the Fates, like the Obi-Wan trailer when it's like the Duel of the Fates kick in. Like it's that level of hype. I feel like of like the music kicks in and you're like, God damn. Yeah, this whole scene's just incredible though. Like, and even the way they get across relative velocity without having to sit there and give you a physics lesson on it. Like he's going towards the ship and he's talking to the computer and he's like, analyze the spin, and when I tell you, I need you to hit the thrusters to give us the same spin. And I love there's the line that we also quoted of like, that's impossible. No, it's necessary. Like, again, dope line of dialogue. Wonderful. But yeah, I think the way they visually show it is, again, not just beautiful, but like so fucking clever. Because you see it from their perspective underneath of like seeing the ship spinning above them. And then once they hit the thrusters, like you see the ship stop spinning. So it's like
it slows down.
Even without like intense physics knowledge, like it gets the point across of like what's happening in the scene. Which is, I just think is like kudos to this movie for being able to do that. Like it's incredible.
And I think it helps that the design of the spaceship is circular.
Yes.
Just to simplify visualizing that even more.
Absolutely. I mean, this is like just one of my favorite scenes in all of cinema, honestly. Like I can't, it's so hype, and every time I watch it, I'm just like holding my breath watching it. It is such a good scene. I mean, this is like this movie's equivalent of an action scene, basically.
Yeah.
Of just like getting,
not including the fist fight.
Yeah, not including the awful action scene, but just like getting your energy levels up. Yeah, it's so good.
Would you say this is like Matrix level hype moment?
Yeah.
Of like dodging the bullets.
Yeah, for me, yeah, this is that level of hype. Yeah,
I'd also say that. That's fair.
Wonderful.
And then we move into the finale.
The climax.
Well, yeah, because then they need to figure out what the fuck to do.
They escape, and they're all happy, and then Tars is like,
oh,
we're being pulled into the black hole.
That was funny, too. Like, Cooper's like, did you just see that? Like, we're good, right?
Yeah.
And then Tars is like, yeah, we're being sucked into the black hole.
Yeah.
Which is like the worst possible thing ever.
Worst case scenario. I do like the, we haven't really talked about it, but like, specifically the visualization of the black hole, like, or maybe you brought this up, I think you did, like, is what won this movie the award.
Oh, yeah.
But just to touch on that a little bit, yeah, it's fucking cool. And also just, like, the idea, even just, like, to science out a bit, that, like, a black hole is so strong gravitationally that light doesn't even escape, so around the orbit of it, you would literally see light being sucked into it, which is what creates those, like, rings of fire, almost. Like, that's just one of those things where it's like real life, like being so cool you don't even have to make it up. Like that is the coolest sci-fi thing, and it is just what a black hole looks like, because now we have an image of a black hole. So yeah, it's lit.
I remember the day that picture was released, and like, wow, it really is just like the black hole from Interstellar, basically.
Yeah, it was dope.
So this is where he falls into the black hole. This was a big controversy when it came out, I remember, of like how he would even survive this. But we talked about like, when does the Tesseract begin?
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, first we have to say he lies to Anne Hathaway and says that they're
Which
both,
I do like.
Yeah, they're both gonna find a way to get to Edmund's planet, and that it's all good, and there's enough resources. And then, surprise, surprise, they're breaking off all the pieces of the ship, and he lies, and he says that you have to leave something behind, and in that case, it was him. And she goes onward as him and Tars plummet into the black hole.
Mm-hmm. The callback to 90% honesty.
Yeah.
Which,
that's
nice.
We didn't talk about that.
Classic Christopher Nolan of the third act is all just callbacks to other lines of dialogue.
Yeah. But I was just going to say, we should have talked about Tars's blinking light joke.
Oh, that is, yeah.
Where he's like, I have a light that I can shine when I'm joking if you want.
Yeah. And I like how it's always just a little bit delayed. It's such perfect comedic timing where he'll say something and we'll just hold on him, and then like the light just comes on, and it's so funny. It's so good.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, so they're falling into this black hole, and this is where we're introduced to the Tesseract.
Not from the MCU.
No, an actual, probably more of what an actual scientific or theoretical Tesseract would be. I still don't completely understand, but
I don't understand
anyway, in this movie, the Tesseract is a physical representation of time.
Yeah.
That these fifth dimensional beings, which we later find out is just future human beings, placed there from the future so that Cooper could see the past in a physical sense and manipulate it.
Yes.
So this scene is really cool, especially because we've been talking about how emotion drives these characters all throughout the film. So the scene that he sees, whether it was intentional or not, throughout the Tesseract is Murph's room. Mm-hmm. And it's really cool design-wise, too, because, first of all, we really like how the bookshelf just looks in the beginning of the movie. Yeah. But then to see it just, like, splayed out everywhere in every which direction.
Yeah, and to create all the lines.
Stretching lines. It looks so great.
Yeah, it's incredible.
I love the color palette of the scene and just the overall design. But yeah, this is where he learns to manipulate gravity to send a message, and this is where we get the stay and the bookshelves moving, and Murph's ghost, which is actually just him all along. It's so cool because thinking back to those scenes where it's just like they're seeing the bookshelf like drop books and stuff, and you don't know what it is yet. It's just so cool to think about a guy communicating through space and time from galaxies away in a different time period, and like the border is this bookshelf in the room. Really cool.
It's awesome.
And it's also dope. Like set in the real world background of Murph and Topher Grace Doctor Boy trying to get Tom's family away from him, basically, because he's like really refusing to let them leave, and they're all dying. So they've like lit his cornfield on fire to distract him to get the family out.
And I like that too.
I know, and so she's trying to like piece things together while we're seeing Matthew McConaughey send these messages in real time, or like his real time. I don't know, whatever.
Time.
I can't even think about it.
But I like that too, because that just represents like we're gonna have to sacrifice something to like actually save the planet here, and that was represented in. They had to torch like their whole cornfield. Just let it go.
Yeah.
So we can actually have a chance for the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy.
It's cool.
So good.
Yeah. It's dope. It's awesome. And also, I think this is the thing that a lot of people latch onto to be like, the movie lost me. It was all right, but then it lost me and I didn't get the ending. And like, I will say, my first time watching it, not that I didn't get it, but I was a little bit like, interesting that like this is how the movie ended. Because like, it is so very real science the whole time, and then you get into this fifth dimension thing, which, by the way, like is still very real science, just like hyper, like
very theoretical,
but still like mathematically real science. Definitely wasn't expecting it my first time watching it, but once you've sort of seen it once and know what to expect, I feel like then like you notice all the clues throughout the movie where you're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect
prefer
sense.
that to him actually going back in time.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Like the Flash, yeah.
Absolutely. But then even the little lines of dialogue where he's talking to Murph and he's like, you know, like your mother always used to say once we had children that like parents then only exist to be the ghost of their children's future, which is like literally what happens, but also like in the moment is a very touching line of dialogue between them, but like actually is what happens later in the movie. So yeah.
It proves its worth in emotion, but then it also ends up being a foreshadowing thing.
Which is like what a movie should do.
That's how you should.
That's how you should make a movie.
It shouldn't exist only to foreshadow. It should be innocuous at first.
Yes.
And then you realize it has hidden meaning.
Unlike the Joker scene from the Batman, which only exists to foreshadow and has no meaning. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, yeah.
One more thing about the Tesseract. I love the design. Like, when he's falling through the black hole, and just this, like, grid appears in the distance, and as he gets closer, I think it just looks so cool.
Yeah.
As he's falling towards it. And I remember the first time watching this movie, I was like, whoa, what is happening?
I know. It really
I thought he was just going to die. Like, I thought he was going to sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
Oh, and then we should also mention that being in the black hole, in the Tesseract in the black hole, TARS is able to gather the data that they need and send it to Jessica Chastain to launch the ship and save humanity.
Yeah.
To fix everything.
And then she saves the day. Girl power.
Girl power. And then Coop is back in real time. Like 120. They say like you're looking good for 124 or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, 100 years older than us.
Yeah, good for him. Yeah, and then you get the other scene that people complain about, and I don't know why. We can talk about it, but just like the last scene with him seeing Murph again.
People complain about
Yeah,
that?
we'll get into it.
That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie.
Let's talk about the scene first. So, like, he sees Murph, who is now an old woman, who essentially has been, like, basically, like, trying to stay alive. Like, there's a line of dialogue about how she was, like, in hypersleep or whatever.
Because she wanted to make sure
she could see him. And I think it's a very touching moment to get that reunion between them. And, like, in particular, like, there's a couple variations on this line, but I really like, because, again, this is, like, a father-daughter movie, and by extension, like, a parent-child movie. And so there's a callback, like, when he's in the Tesseract and Tar says, like, how do you know she'll go back for the watch? And he says, because I gave it to her. And then you get the callback here when he's like, how did you know I would come back? And she says, because my dad told me. Like, very, like, again, people complaining this movie isn't emotional enough. Like, that is very touching, like, parent-child connection type stuff.
Where do you think Tom was?
He's
dead.
long dead. He stayed on the farm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he probably didn't even leave.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have.
He would have stayed.
He was also the older brother, so if she was barely alive, no hope for
True.
him. And men always die
point.
sooner, so sorry.
True. That's fine with me, Carol.
Yeah.
Get me out of here. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's
sorry, just going off of that, I have a note from when I was watching this time that says maybe they need more depressed people in space so they won't lie just to get back to Earth.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hey, you know
that's
what?
true.
Fair.
But anyway, back
Question
to this
number one.
touching
How
ending.
depressed? Yeah. You know, it's very touching, and you know they have their little moment of reconciliation, and like, I'm happy you came back, and yada yada, and then she has the line about like, look, no parent should have to watch their child die. I'm here with my family.
Go now.
You have shit to do. I'm glad you came back, but you have shit to do.
And that's like probably their goodbye forever.
Yeah. And then we just sort of do a very Nolan thing of like, we talked about this on that last episode of ending movies from Nolan, always having a monologue that sort of is like
a montage
that's intercut with montage. Yeah. Of him kind of going back into space to find Dr. Brand, who is trying to start a colony on this other planet.
Yeah. So do you think Edmund was dead or alive?
Yeah. I'm going to say dead.
Yeah. Well, we see his patch, right? Like she...
Oh, there's the grave.
Yeah.
Never mind. Okay.
The question I have, though, is was he dead when she got there, or is it sort of like now he's dead? Because when she walks away from the gravesite, we do see a bit of a colony that has started. So I've always been like,
oh yeah.
like I don't know. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter, but
Well, we just see the lights on.
that's true. We don't see any
So
other
we're not
people.
really sure. I mean, it's definitely left ambiguous on purpose.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, regardless.
I just wonder if
he's
she
dead
ever
now.
saw him alive again.
Yeah. That's a good point.
We'll
Don't know.
never know.
Yeah, so let's just, like, the criticism I always hear about the ending of this movie is like, well, the whole movie was about him getting back to her, and then he does, and he leaves. And I was like, but did you watch the scene? Like, they have their moment of reconciliation, and then she's like, okay, we're good now.
Yeah, because, like, what are they gonna do with her, like, basically dead on this, like, what, are they gonna, like, play cards to catch up? Like, I don't understand what
I don't
more
understand
you
what people
wanted.
want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cards.
You know what? Well, it's true. And I'm also sort of like, I think it is a very touching thing to be like, I'm glad you came back, but, like, why would you just stay here and watch me die? Like that is a very common expression of, like, no parent should ever have to watch their child die. Like, that is something people say. And, like, she says it, and it fits
And also,
in the
like,
narrative
there's not
of the
even
movie.
much to catch up on, because, like, everyone's already told him of all that she's done with her life, because she
Yeah.
created all of this. So, like, it's not like
Yeah.
he has to have her tell him about it. He knows already.
Exactly.
Like, maybe
That
he's
was
missing
also
out
a
on,
hard
like,
moment.
did you fall in love? Like, maybe that would be nice to know, I
Clearly
guess.
she has
But,
a
like,
family.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, but then also, I think people are taking this so literal because her narration ends the movie.
Yeah.
But we don't actually, like, see the end of that conversation. Like, the narration ends the movie, but there's a cut where it's like he could have spent hours there with her
Well, yeah.
and then left. But I think people take it very literally that, like, she
He
says
did.
that and then he just went and then left. And it's like, no, like, I don't think that's what happened. Like, I think if you just kind of, like, watch and, like, have an understanding of, like, film and, like, the way Nolan tends to use montage to end the movie, yeah, more stuff probably happened there, but we just don't
it
need to
wasn't like
see
real
it.
time.
Yeah, for sure.
But that was a hype moment too of when, oh, you didn't have to name the station after me, and the guy's like, actually it's named after your daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, where is she? Is she still alive?
Yeah.
That was cool.
It's cool.
And also just, like, the fact that they recreated his farm and
Yeah.
Earth and were, like, playing baseball
Or probably just
on
picked
this,
up the house.
I
Yeah.
Because they
guess.
can manipulate gravity now.
I always kind of thought they probably just picked up the house.
I think so.
Damn.
I will say, though, like, again, going back to the ending, they do set it up because there's a conversation he has with Tars at the house where he's like, I don't like pretending that everything's back to normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, this is weird. What, I'm just going to sit here on this farm and pretend like none of this happened? So, and then, again, one of the things we understand throughout the movie is, like, how much Murph and Cooper get each other,
Yeah.
like, personality-wise. So, when she's the one that's like, I know you hate this life. Like, you should go do something that's not this life. So, like, it all perfectly lines up and fits.
Even just from a character's perspective, Murph has gotten past that, like, at the beginning of the movie when she's dreading having to be away from her
Yeah.
father. Like, she's past that. She's learned how to get past that.
Exactly.
That was her
Journey.
journey through the movie.
Well, her journey, is, like, realizing my father didn't abandon me, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah, like...
But also, I can survive without him.
Yeah. Anyway, people are dumb.
But yeah, that's the end. So
Carol, you got any miscellaneous notes?
Okay, I don't, I actually, like, barely looked at my notes when we discussed, so why did I take
Very
them?
good.
Who knows? But I do have a vague outline of what, because this movie was almost made by Steven Spielberg. You didn't really talk
Yeah.
about it, but, like, there was...
Whoa, I didn't know that.
you didn't know that?
No, how did I not know that?
Yeah, there was a whole... This
thought
movie
we
went
talked
through a
about
lot of different, almost possible lifetimes. It was a whole thing. But somehow people have the outline of his original script, so I was wondering if you guys wanted to hear it. We can cut it out if it's, like, long and boring, but it's kind of interesting because it's very different.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
So I'm reading this, like, verbatim from, like, fun facts on IMDb. So the original script of the Steven Spielberg version depicts an almost entirely different movie. Some examples include Murph being a boy, no humans are first sent into space, just probes are, and it's a probe that leads Cooper to the hidden NASA base, which is on a remote island in California, where Brandon Cooper deep-sea dive for parts. Also, the robots are much more human-like, featuring hands and shoulders. TARS is sucked into space early on when the ship gets stuck between two black holes, Gargantua and Pantagruel, named for two French mythical giants, immediately after entering the wormhole. Afterwards, the crew, including an additional member named Roth, only visit the ice planet, where they discover that a Chinese mission had been there around 30 years prior and seemed to have vanished until it is learned that they were killed by the radiation of a neutron star. The crew falls through the ice into an entirely different ecosystem with a living, rearranging forest and colonial organisms that fight each other every night, compounding into larger organisms to reach a higher spot closer to the ice sky for sunlight in the day. After searching the area, they find an abandoned Chinese camp with an experimental black box that can control gravity, and are then discovered by Chinese robots who sabotage their return home with the box. The crew orbits a black hole for hundreds of Earth years before entering a second wormhole where they interact directly with the fifth dimension bulk beings who lead them to a 4,000-year-old space station built by the Chinese that's only a few hundred years old due to space-time relativity, powered by a captured mini black hole that views galaxies as flat lines of light. The Chinese have built thousands of wormholes and tried to travel back in time with the gravity technology to save all of Earth, but died in the process. Cooper returns to Earth in the year 2230 to find a barren land with ice storms. He sits down prepared to die in the storm, then awakens in a manner similar to the movie where he meets his great-great-grandson rather than an aged Murph. After being bored with the new world, he steals a ship to find Brand, and the two had been intimate before Brand left Cooper to continue to explore space rather than return to Earth.
That sounds like 4 different movies.
Yeah.
That sounds awful.
Also, like, very anti-Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah,
glad we
that
didn't
is,
get that
not
movie.
good.
Sorry, Steven. I know you've made many great film, but I'm glad it wasn't this one.
But also, like, I mean, not to speak out of turn here, but I don't really think of Steven Spielberg as like a writer. Like, he's a very talented. He's very much like J.J. Abrams, where it's like, give him a good script and he will turn it into something
we talked
wonderful.
about this on,
but
I think, on the Jurassic Park.
yeah,
episode.
like it's. I don't know. That does not sound good.
Yeah.
Why would there be 2 black holes in the same?
That
And
was funny.
2 black holes and a neutron star, all in the
2
same.
wormholes as well.
Like,
Yeah. Well, then eventually thousands of wormholes planted by the Chinese.
I hate everything about this. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we didn't get that movie. I'll just leave it there.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's all
I'm
I
just
got.
gonna say a bunch of random
Yeah.
quotes I took. My notes are always just random quotes. We talked about most of them, but just to end the episode, I think it bears repeating. But
and I almost never take notes,
you
except
go.
mental notes.
Obviously, we used to look up in the sky and wonder at our place in the stars. Now we just look down and worry about our place in the dirt. I think it's very
The dust.
very nice quote, because it very much is what we do, and it's also, like we said, about like you can't separate one from the other. Like you have to kind of like either be for science or not. Now we're just here to be memories for our kids. Once you're a parent, you're the ghost of your children's future. Okay, that's relativity, folks. I just think is very funny because it's like that's all, folks, but like with relativity, and it's very funny. Whatever. Then I have you eggheads with 4 exclamation marks because that made me laugh really hard. Then I have yes times 4 because Dr. Mann says it 4 times. Oh, and then we didn't talk about this, but when he's leaving him, he says, "I'm sorry, I can't watch you go through this, but I'm here for you. I'm here for you." And he has him like on the speaker and he's listening to him die. Very funny. Override, great. It's not possible. No, it's necessary. Awesome. Yeah, Newton's third law, the only way humans have found out the only way to get somewhere is to leave something behind. Nice. How do you know? Because I gave it to her, and then because my dad told me. Nice. This movie is very well written.
Yes.
Shout out to
Yes.
Christopher and John. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Christopher and Jonathan Nolan. Great little writing team of the 2 of them. Good job. Good job with this one, guys.
Yeah, in case
Knocked
you
it out of
didn't
the
know,
park.
good job from us. Good job.
Yeah, in case the last 3 hours weren't enough information for you, we
In case the last
absolutely
8 years
Yeah.
wasn't enough information.
Yeah.
So this is Interstellar. We all, of course, really love this movie overall. And this was a very... Okay, this is horrible. I'm going to start off.
No, this is all staying in, so...
Anyway, our next episode is the Planet of the Apes trilogy.
Yeah, the Matt Reeves trilogy that also is not fully directed by Matt Reeves,
Yeah.
but he did the best too, so...
Yeah. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about the original Planet of the Apes movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to be... I'm so excited for that episode.
Me too. Very excited. Thanks again for listening to the Feature Length Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to us if you liked this video, give us a rating and review. If you want to stay up to date with the latest episodes of the podcast, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you hit the bell to be notified when we post a new video, or follow the podcast on Spotify. If you want to connect with us directly, you can follow us on Instagram at Feature Length Podcast, or even send us an email at featurelengthpodcast@gmail.com. Catch you on the flip side.